and therefore selling music is potentially not as lucrative as it once was for the artist. This means that massive concert tours are a neat way of bringing back that exclusivity and therefore money to the business. The glitzier and more hyped the show and tailored to separate fan groups, the better. After all, in an amorphous digital world, we place a great deal of value on feeling special. A final word from Poppy, our fourth expert witness.
At the end of the day, fans want human connection, and if you're a big name artist and the fan base is waiting for you, then there is no reason why we won't see mega tours until the end of time.
This inquiry was presented by me, Tanya Beckett. The producers were Maeve Schaffer and Matt Toulson. The researcher was Evie Yabsley. The editor was Tom Bigwood. And the technical producer was Craig Boardman.
That was the inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and you're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. We find ourselves on January 7th, middle of the first week after the holidays back, school back in session. It is school day number 1, and it's misty in Winnipeg, -8. It's going to be very mild today. It felt like spring out there this morning, quite frankly, driving to work. I had to remind myself not to go too quickly, just in case, but it was a really great drive. In the city, a high of -2 right now in Winnipeg is what we're looking for the day. And it's going to be mild over much of Manitoba. So if we look over at Brandon today, you're going to get some sunshine. Your high is -3. And up in Thompson, for relative to what you've been having, your high is -14 today. So that's what we've got on the way weather-wise. The morning show's on until 8:37, and thanks for starting the day with us. Also here in our control room is Mr. Abby Adeyemi. Welcome back, Abby. Abby is our senior tech in the show. He also will cover the forecast, so we'll talk to him soon. Good morning to Mr. Brad Lillies, who is producing our YouTube stream, and good morning to Corey Funk, who's going to cover your commute and directs the morning show. Heather Wells is in also, and she's here with our latest news headlines from Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, use of the diabetes and weight loss drug Ozempic is on the rise in Manitoba. Provincial data shows the pharmacare program has covered the cost of more than 20,000 new claims each year since 2021. And generic versions of that drug are expected to hit the Canadian market likely this summer. Former Manitoba PC leadership candidate Wally Dowdrich has asked a court to restore his ecotourism company's permits to operate off-road polar bear viewing vehicles. Dowdrich and his company Lazy Bear Expeditions filed a statement of claim with Manitoba's Court of King's Bench in late December. He wants the court to order the province to restore those permits for his business. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, the Premier will be in Pimicikamak today. CBC's Ian Fraze is about to board a plane and go there as well. People there have been not living there because they've been without power for some weeks now. There are many of them in Winnipeg. So stay tuned. We're going to hear more about that through the morning. In addition, we're going to hear how you can win a pot of cash and help those in need in Winnipeg this winter. What's that about? We'll find out. And we'll have the latest look at what's happening in international politics. That's coming up right now as well on World Report.
On cue.
Hey, I'm Talia Schlanger, in for Tom Power. After the success of her memoir, Eat, Pray, Love, Elizabeth Gilbert was no longer anonymous, which made going to 12-step meetings difficult. She'll reflect on being addicted to love and affection and why she chose to tell the whole messy truth in her new book.
I don't think I was thinking. I think I was quite literally out of my mind.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Stephanie Skandaris. The White House says all options are on the table when it comes to the possibility of taking over Greenland, including using the United States military. President Donald Trump says the island is key to U.S. national security. Officials say acquiring the self-governed Danish territory is now a priority. The CBC's Willie Lowry is in Washington. Willie, what is the latest?
Seemingly buoyed by its military success in Venezuela, the U.S. appears to be shifting focus to Greenland. U.S. President Donald Trump believes the U.S. needs it for security. U.S. media is reporting that Secretary of State Marco Rubio told lawmakers on the Hill that the U.S. was interested in buying the island. In a statement sent to CBC, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said, quote, "The president and his team are discussing a range of options to pursue this important foreign policy goal, and of course, utilizing the U.S. military is always an option at the commander-in-chief's disposal." There is bipartisan concern with both Democrats and some Republicans fearing what this might mean for long-standing international relationships.
These are our allies. You don't treat your allies this way. I mean, it's embarrassing. And by the way, most Greenlanders want to be Greenland. They don't want to be American. They want to be our allies, though. And it's creating a lot of anger and hurt with our friends in Europe.
The idea of invading Greenland would undermine and frankly just blow up the Atlantic Charter and NATO.
That was Republican Representative Don Bacon and Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen.
And so what are we expecting next?
Several European countries, including France, Germany, Spain, the UK, Poland, and Denmark, issued a strongly worded statement yesterday reaffirming support for Greenland and making clear that the future of the island is for Greenland and Denmark to decide, not the U.S. Denmark, meanwhile, has requested a meeting with Marco Rubio as it scrambles to figure out just how serious the U.S. is and what it can do to keep the U.S., a key NATO ally, happy without actually giving it what it wants.
Willie, thank you.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Willie Lowry in Washington. So as we just heard from Willie, the White House says acquiring Greenland is a national security priority. But people there say they deserve respect, and Donald Trump needs to end his takeover threats. The CBC's Juanita Taylor has that part of the story.
We don't want to be Americans. We are Galasik. We are Greenlanders.
That's Sarah Ozempic, chair of the Inuit Circumpolar Council in Nuuk, Greenland, an international NGO representing 180,000 Inuit of Greenland, Canada, Alaska, and Chukotka in Russia.
Inuit have been fighting for the self-government arrangements for our rights.
Ozempic rejects U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to take over Greenland.
People of Galasik Nunaat and Inuit, we have already been through colonization, and we know what it means when the interests of others and more powerful nations and peoples affects us negatively.
It is actually a shock that this could be real, that this could happen.
Ayu Peter is a Greenlander living in Iqaluit since 1981.
It is causing a lot of fright and a lot of uncertainty for the people of Greenland because we are so small.
The White House says using force to annex Greenland is an option, but Sarah Ozempic says Greenland is a peaceful region.
We demand a dignified dialogue based on diplomacy and cooperation.
Governor General Mary Simon and Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand will visit Greenland in February. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Rankin Inlet, Nunavut.
Donald Trump says Venezuela will be turning over $2 billion worth of crude oil to the United States. On social media, Trump said that oil will be sold at market price, and he personally will ensure the money benefits the people of both countries. Venezuela has a glut of oil it hasn't been able to sell since the Trump administration imposed a blockade on its oil tankers. The backlash to all this U.S. intervention is building in Caracas and next door in Colombia. Paul Hunter has that story.
With the sound of support for Nicolas Maduro on the streets of Caracas still echoing through Venezuela after this rally for the now ex-president yesterday, fresh demonstrations are set for today to play out in the country next door, Colombia, where Colombian President Gustavo Petro has called for national protests against Donald Trump after Trump's move on Maduro on the weekend and the suggestion he may soon go after Petro, Trump citing drug trafficking from Colombia as the issue. The Colombian president yesterday posting on social media, Trump has a senile brain, adding, anyone who voted for him voted for a greedy outlaw. In Caracas, defiance continues in Venezuela's parliament, where yesterday newly sworn-in interim president Delcy Rodriguez labeled Trump's action against Maduro unprecedented aggression. All of this underlining tensions throughout the region continue to escalate. Last night in Cucuta, Colombia, right on the Venezuelan border, Colombia's military showed off its soldiers and armored personnel carriers for journalists. Some 30,000 troops have been deployed along the border with Venezuela. At the ready is the message, just in case. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Cucuta, Colombia.
Congratulations to your nation, to you personally.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky congratulating the president of Cyprus. The country has taken over the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union. Zelensky will be attending a ceremony to mark the event. He'll also be attending some high-level meetings with President Nikos Christodoulidis and with EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Zelensky is expecting to continue Ukraine's campaign to join the EU after saying the Cypriot presidency could be significant. It comes on the heels of yesterday's meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, which includes Canada. They released a joint declaration reaffirming their commitments to Ukraine. It says that Ukraine's ability to defend itself is critically important to ensuring the future of the Euro-Atlantic's collective security. A winter storm is upending the lives of millions of people in Europe as it enters its third day. Snow, ice, and freezing temperatures are forcing flights to be cancelled and trains to be delayed. Dutch airline KLM is running short of de-icing fluid for its jets. It's cancelled at least 600 flights. In France, 3 people have been killed in road accidents. The snow has stopped bus and transport truck services in Paris. Officials are warning that will disrupt supply chains and the delivery of fresh produce. Federal, provincial, and Indigenous leaders are expected to travel to Pimachikamak Cree Nation in Manitoba today. A days-long power outage has caused the water system to freeze. The community, which is 530 kilometers north of Winnipeg, has declared a state of emergency. The damage to critical infrastructure has forced thousands of people to leave their homes with no timeline as to when they can return. The chief has been asking for emergency logistical support from the Canadian Armed Forces. Today marks 1 year since the deadly Los Angeles fires. More than 30 people were killed, thousands of buildings destroyed, many of them people's homes. Now, 12 months later, one of the most devastated communities is starting to rebuild. Steve Futterman has more from Los Angeles.
This was a year ago tonight. There are several fires taking place right now. The Los Angeles fires ended up taking more than 30 lives and destroying more than 16,000 structures. A year later, in a few areas, there are signs of rebirth.
You know, we're not going away.
In this section of Pacific Palisades, you hear the sound of construction throughout the day. Many homes are being rebuilt. Sue Cole expects her home to be finished in the middle of the year.
I'm in a hurry to get the house done, but not really to move back quite yet because I don't want to be the only one.
Greg Cahill is one of the many construction workers on the job every day.
Mood is build, go. It is going to be a long process.
A very long process. Most lots where homes once stood remain flat with no rebuilding in sight. A year later, there is still lots of anger and lots of finger pointing. LA Mayor Karen Bass and the fire department have come under the most criticism for not responding fast enough. The new fire chief, Jamie Moore, says mistakes were made.
We've learned an awful lot from the Palisades fire. We've taken those lessons to really solidify our operations.
Last night,
we gathered tonight to remember.
The Pacific Palisades Presbyterian Church held a special service at its temporary location. Today, throughout Southern California, other events are being held to commemorate the 1-year anniversary. Steve Futterman, CBC News, Los Angeles.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Stephanie Skandaris. This is CBC News.
Good morning, everyone. How you doing out there? I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. It is Wednesday morning, January the 7th, and in Winnipeg, mild. It's going to be the mildest day of the week. It's misty and -9. It's not where we are at, it's where we're going. As you'll hear in the forecast, the rest of the day is going to be mild as well. This hour on the program, that might be really good news for folks in Pimachikamak. CBC's Ian Fraze is actually going to be on a plane within the hour to head up there. So will the Premier be going there today, as the power's been out since December 28th. So we'll try to touch base with Ian before he boards the plane just to get the latest. Also this hour on the program, Canada's trade future with the U.S. remains uncertain. We're going to look at how Canada might find some stable ground this year as Kuzma is up for renegotiation. And then a little bit later in the hour, a Juno award-winning artist will perform at the WAG today, and you can go for free. Stay tuned to learn more about the free program she's helping to launch that's going to be happening every Wednesday at the WAG. They're hoping it'll have an impact on the community and also on the vibrancy of the nighttime scene in our downtown. So stay tuned. We're going to talk to the Winnipeg Art Gallery coming up before 7. Right now, Heather Wells is in with more details on the news that I've mentioned and other stories. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Yes, government leaders will visit Pimachikamak Cree Nation today, days after the chief requested military help to recover from that power outage, which lasted 4 days, and in its wake, damaged 2 schools, the arena, youth center, all damaged. The community sewage plant is frozen, and Chief David Monia says only a small percentage of more than 1,300 homes in Pimachikamak have been looked at by maintenance staff. He wants the Army to come in and help with some of the repairs. So we'll hear the latest on that story. Some Winnipeg parents are giving a failing grade to a plan to limit the amount of time they spend picking up and dropping off their children from school. The proposal by Councillor Marcus Chambers would require drivers to make that transfer within just 60 seconds in designated zones outside elementary schools. We'll hear more on that in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
Everyone's talking about that story in the context of that movie.
Gone in 60 seconds.
I know.
Not gone in 60 seconds.
And then I guess, trying to assess whether or not you can do it. So some parents skeptical, as you said. But
absolutely.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
You can call us on that, 788-3205. You can even take 60 seconds to tell us what you think. Let's get into what's happening in the weather. Welcome back, Abby Adiyemi. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Mercy.
Yeah, so really mild today.
Really, really mild. Though we're waking up to some misty conditions this morning. However, sunshine is going to be breaking through those misty conditions in the south. While up north, we're still seeing just like snow dust in parts of the northern regions this morning. For Winnipeg right now, -9 outside, some mist to start your Wednesday. Those misty conditions will clear as we get into the morning and as we head towards that high for today of -2, though our temperatures may stay fairly between -8 and -5 for much of this morning, but we are aiming for a high of -2 later today. Just expect light winds through the day and tonight. Partly cloudy skies and a slim chance of flurries will come before we get some freezing rain overnight. Similar conditions we're seeing in the southern part of the province. Some regions seeing some clear skies, while some regions getting those misty conditions. Temperatures hovers between -8 and -13, while up north we're just seeing light snow and temperatures sitting near -20 in some regions in the north. But Winnipeg right now, we're starting at -9 with some mist and sunshine on its way.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk has popped into the studio with your morning commute tee-up. Hello.
Hello. Yes, so far very quiet commute, but we are in for a mild day, so you're going to want to top up that window washer fluid probably, I'm guessing. Maybe avoid the car wash for a couple of days.
Feels like March out there.
Yeah, really it does. But if you do see something going on, haven't heard of any major issues yet, if you're walking, you're biking, you're driving, you want to let me know. Maybe you're taking the river trail today as well. What does that look like? Is that you can give me a call. That
Safe?
Yeah, right.
Careful.
Yeah, 204-788-3093.
Well, in a couple of moments, we're going to check on a local project that is hoping to raise funds to assist those experiencing homelessness in Winnipeg. So stay tuned for that interview. But let's start by looking economically at what is happening, the impact of what's happening with the U.S. and Venezuela. If you pay close attention to Canada's trade relationship with the U.S., your word of 2025 might have been uncertainty. And the U.S. continues to act unpredictably on the global stage, so most recently in Venezuela. And that word then might not change for 2026. But the U.S.-Canada-Mexico trade agreement, CUSMA, is also up for review this year. And so Canada has to be needing some assurances and is looking for some assurances. So to look at how Canada can negotiate a trade deal with the U.S. amid all of this chaos is Viet Vu. He is manager of economic research at the DAIS, which is a think tank at Toronto Metropolitan University. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. 2026 sure do feel like 2025 already.
I was reflecting the exact same sentiment yesterday. Right? I don't know if that's good or not. So our biggest trading partner, just to revisit the detail, has captured the president of Venezuela. Could that impact Canada's trade negotiation with the U.S., do you think?
Well, I still am in shock over the news, right? But I think there are two implications people have focused on. The first is about the US controlling Venezuela's production of heavy crude, the exact same type of oil Canada produces. So that could be a threat. But the $2 billion US-Venezuelan deal seem big, but Canada actually exports $100 billion of oil to the US every year. So for this to be a real threat, Venezuelan production has to increase, which is no easy feat. The second implication, in my mind, is more worrying. Since the day of the kidnapping, Trump has again threatened our sovereignty alongside Mexico, Greenland, Colombia, and other countries. And regardless of how real the threat is, one of their goals is to divide us ahead of the negotiations. So the Canadian team should be prepared to fight this on the information battleground as well.
We actually have a full interview about that threat coming up in the next hour of this show, just to sort of look at how maybe how worried people should be or not, sort of try to put it in some kind of perspective for folks. Let's talk CUSMA. It's up for review this summer, as we know. So the Trump administration has said changes have to be made to the trade agreement. Beyond what you just said, which is hoping we won't be more divided going in, what do you expect from these trade talks this year?
Well, the first signs of what to expect, I think, will be revealed soon, as the US Congress will hear a report on the public consultation the country conducted in the fall, which essentially will show us what the US public wants them to be focused on. Dominic LeBlanc, Minister of US-Canada Trade, is also headed to DC this month, but the official negotiations are not due to start, as you said, until July, and the only thing we know for sure is that it will be a long one. The original CUSMA agreement was negotiated over 18 months, and this time I don't think will be different. And when that negotiation becomes that long, there are a lot of political events that may materially change discussions, from the midterm elections in the US in November to the continued reality of Mark Carney operating in a minority parliament.
What do you think some of the concessions might have to be? I mean, we made key concessions to the U.S. last year, including scrapping the digital services tax, rolling back the retaliatory tariffs. Do you anticipate more of that?
Yeah, I mean, there are always concessions in a trade negotiations, right? But if I have to put a finger on it, the most interesting part of this renegotiations will be those that concern the tech sector. While we have to take public complaints from the US with lots of salt, as they seem to change by the minute, many of the current complaints have been those that prevent US tech companies from operating freely in Canada. And Canada, in an AI and tech race, also has a lot of interest in ensuring that the Canadian economy is not too reliant on or beholden to US tech. So the current chapter about digital services in CUSMA is a bit of a mess, and if it is to continue, that will likely change. So I'm looking at things like the ability and limits on independent privacy legislation, the extent of domestic company favoritism, taxation of digital services, and intellectual property, amongst others, as key areas of negotiation.
There have been critics of how Prime Minister Mark Carney has the tact he's taken with President Trump. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is among those critics who've accused him of being too conciliatory to Trump, despite all the elbows up rhetoric of last year. What should his strategy be going forward, do you think?
Well, I think it's important to clarify, right? The negotiations haven't started yet. So we don't know the strategy he will use, as you say. And he's been trying a bunch of stuff. And trade negotiations will always involve some grandstanding and some concessions. But the key principle here is that whenever we are making any concessions, those concessions must have tangible benefits to the country. So let's talk about some examples on some of the concessions that we talked about previously. The reduction in retaliatory tariffs. That was matched with the US, where we continue to have some retaliatory tariffs on steel and aluminum. So I would say it achieved its objectives in it being a targeted match on what the US is doing. However, the pause in digital services tax, while seemingly pragmatic at the time, didn't perhaps achieve the goal of advancing talks Mark Carney had hoped. So the two principle here is one, whenever you concede something, you better get something from it. And second, whatever we concede has to be stuff that could potentially benefit Canada by giving up by itself as well.
I guess before you go, I should ask, as we set out the 2026 here, the new year, how we're doing with broadening our global trade relationships. Prime Minister Carney has talked a lot about that. How's that effort going?
Well, I think this is where things get interesting, right? Because in 2025, as trade with the US decreased, we increased trade with other countries. Canadian companies were able to fill $11 billion out of the $18.5 billion lost in the US trade. That said, recouping the rest isn't as simple as selling things to new customers. A lot of the value in trade is not in selling final completed goods, but contributing parts changing hands in a global supply chain. Famously, car parts cross the CUSMA borders 5 to 8 times before final assembly, and it's really difficult to build that kind of relationship with another country, especially as those relationships are based on trust, where many Canada is trying to work with right now, such as China and India, has certainly had tenuous diplomatic relationship with us in the past.
Thanks very much, Viet. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Marcy. Always fun to chat.
Viet Vu is Manager of Economic Research at the DAIS at Toronto Metropolitan University. As I alluded to, we will have an interview coming up in the next hour of the show discussing specifically what these threats from the United States against Greenland are and how they could impact us here in Canada or not, because there's a lot of uncertainty and worry here from Canadians. So we'll talk about that in the next hour.
All right, what are we talking about? A new year means a fresh start. Okay, make a list for the year and take charge of your life in 2026. Look, I'm not talking about your to-do list. I'm talking about your watch list. Cross off Family Feud Canada, St. Pierre, and this hour has 22 minutes. There's no excuses. Dream big, people. Enjoy all your favorite shows on CBC TV or stream anytime on CBC Gem. Mic drop.
Mild in Winnipeg, misty -9. The high today is going to be -2. Well, that is good news if you are living without a home, although I shouldn't have phrased it that way because that sounds silly. I think my point is it's really difficult in January in the winter months and how cold it is out there. Today, at least, it's a bit milder. But that doesn't change, obviously, the challenges that people are facing. Main Street Project is one of those organizations in Winnipeg that obviously does outreach and helps with that. And they have actually a special initiative that they're hoping to get you involved in. To talk about it, Adrita Hassan is with us via Zoom, Marketing and Communications Specialist for Main Street Project. Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
So tell me a little bit about what you have going on you've just launched something to raise funds to help folks.
Yeah, we just launched a 50-50 raffle to help support with our winter efforts, because we all know that Winnipeg winters can be very unforgiving. And for those who live outside for days and months on end, any little item of comfort, any support we can give them is actually a matter of life and death.
In the past, when you've had this particular initiative, this raffle, how much money was raised and where did the funds go?
Historically, our January raffles have been a huge success. The first one we did raised over $35,000, and the one that we just did last year raised over $43,000, which meant that the winner took home a prize of over $21,000. The previous 2 years, we were specifically focusing on fighting food security in our community. So all of the proceeds went to our food programs. But this year, considering our increased winter response efforts, for example, our emergency shelter, which can hold up to 120 people, is always full during the winter. And we have an extra van on the road alongside our regular van outreach that is working to support people 24/7 every day of the year. So this year we're focusing on our increased winter response efforts because the need for our services always increase around the winter.
So does that mean that you're looking for another van, or is it just to help with the one you have, or with more space, or how do you have a sense of what you're hoping to do with the money?
Yeah, we already have a second van on the road that just operates in the winter months. I think with the money that we're hoping to raise from this raffle, we're bracing for the coldest months of the year, that is January and February. And proceeds from the raffle will go towards supporting our emergency shelter, our outreach program, and also for the people who are outside, uh, we can provide them with emergency blankets, food to keep warm, and even safe rides to a warm location.
Got it. So just more things to support what you're already doing, and more things to hand out as you're out there on the streets.
Yes.
I mentioned somewhat clumsily, but that this week is obviously milder. But we've certainly already experienced a deep freeze. How concerned are you about the fact that the shelter, as you said, is, full most nights now?
It has always been the case that because in this winter you cannot stay outside for prolonged periods of time. You might develop winter-based injuries. You might even freeze, even though this week is going to be milder. But mild winter weather has its own demerits because people who are living outside, the mild winter causes the snow to melt and then it freezes up quickly again. So their shoes, and if you're camping on a tent, all of this will be wet and it exposes them to all kinds of cold related injuries that we want to avoid.
You raise a really good point there, because if your shoes get wet, and then you can get an infection if your feet are wet, or if even moving across, and most of us know that feeling in Winnipeg when it freezes, as you point out, when it gets bumpy, even navigating outside is really difficult as well. How do people support your initiative here, the raffle that you mentioned, if they want to support a Main Street Project?
They can just go to our website, mainstreetproject.ca, and buy tickets online. Every ticket purchased helps us help somebody out there and make winter a little bit easier for them.
All right. Thank you very much, Adrita, for being with us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
That is Adrita Hassan, the Marketing Communications Specialist for Main Street Project. The last day to buy a raffle ticket is January 29th. And as she just mentioned, you can check out their website for more information about how to get a ticket. But you can also check out their website for other ways to support Main Street Project and the work that they do in our community. Well, we're coming up to news time at 6:30, but right now the timing just worked out that we've reached Ian Fraze. He's waiting for a plane, and he is going to be flying off at 7 o'clock to Pimicikamak, which, as you likely know, is 530 kilometers north of Winnipeg. They have called a state of emergency, and the Premier will be there today. Ian, can you just remind us sort of what's at stake, and what you're flying into in terms of what's happened there so far?
Yeah, will be quite eye-opening, I'm sure, to go into the community and see what's there. We're hearing just 2% of the homes, the 200 homes that have been damaged with leaks and burst pipes, have been repaired. We know that around 4,000 people have been evacuated. There's issues with the homes, with burst pipes, sewage backups. We know we had Chief David Monia saying yesterday that both the sewage plant and the water plant are on life support. They're really just relying on generators and duct tape just to keep everything going. Of course, as our listeners know, Marcy, a power outage back on December 28th. This line crossed the Nelson River. It snapped. Power was out for 4 days, leading to all this evacuation. But once the power got turned on 4 days later, that did not solve the problems, and we're seeing that now with a lot of homes in disrepair. And I will be part of this visit. There's also political leaders that will be on tap as well, sort of assessing the damage for themselves.
All right, Ian. Well, it will be good to have eyes on the ground there. Hopefully you fly safe. Just curious, as you're at the airport getting ready to fly out, anybody else going up that you've noticed around you so far, or is it pretty quiet at the small airport this morning going to Pimicikamak?
So far it is media and some community members that are heading up. There is a chartered plane that will be taking off around 8 a.m. that will feature Premier Wab Kinew, AMC Grand Chief Kara Wilson, AFN National Chief Cindy Woodhouse, MKO Grand Chief Darren Sethi, Federal Northern and Arctic Affairs Minister Rebecca Chartrand. So that plane will be heading off a little later. There will be, sort of a tour that all these political leaders will be part of. They'll be checking out the water plans. Yeah, they'll be checking out the situation, and there'll be a meeting also with local chief and council as well.
All right, Ian, fly safely. Thank you very much for the time.
Thanks for having me.
That is CBC's Ian Fraze, the airport this morning in Winnipeg. He's getting ready to fly to Pimicikamak. Heather Wells has more details about what's at stake and also what's happened in the community. And that is next on your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:31, Winnipeg is getting close to that January melt. A high today of -2. The sky's going to clear out. Some fog patches this morning, but -2, that is more than 10 degrees warmer than seasonal. Government leaders will visit Pimicikamak Cree Nation today, days after the chief requested military help to recover from a 4-day power outage. Yesterday, the province echoed the chief's request in a letter to the federal government. David Monius says only a small percentage of the more than 1,300 homes in Pimicikamak have been looked at by maintenance staff. He says 2 schools, the arena, and youth center all are damaged. The community sewage plant frozen. Monius says 4,000 people are still out of their homes indefinitely.
We have no place to put these people. We're in the middle of fixing their house, and that's why we can't have them return right away, because we need the space to be able to identify, assess, and actually fix up the houses.
Monius hopes Army engineers can take on some of those repairs. Gone in 60 seconds. May have been a good premise for an action movie, but some Winnipeg parents say it's a terrible idea for elementary schools. Councillor Marcus Chambers wants to impose a time limit of 1 minute for drivers to pick up or drop off children in designated zones outside elementary schools. Chambers says it's necessary to reduce congestion and unsafe behavior that can put kids at risk. Mom Susan Moskovich says there's no need to rush kids and parents through their daily ritual.
In elementary school, it's all about community, getting to know people. So basically, you're taking that away from families if you make them leave. And also, how are you even going to enforce that? So are you going to have security guards here moving people off the premises? I just don't think it's realistic.
Chambers' proposal also calls for clearer signage and stepped-up enforcement during peak school hours. The Riel Committee is set to debate that motion today. Claims for diabetes and weight loss drug Ozempic have been ballooning in Manitoba. Provincial data shows the number of times the medication has been dispensed across this province has more than quadrupled in the past 4 years. That could increase, with generic versions of the drug expected to come on the market this year. Britt Curl at Pharmacists Manitoba says those thinking of using drugs like Ozempic should consider whether they're right for them.
The important thing to remember with Ozempic is that it's not meant to be used just to lose weight for people who don't have, significant weight to lose.
Ozempic is covered under Manitoba's Pharmacare program for people with type 2 diabetes. Others have to pay out of pocket or rely on private insurance to cover the cost. Novo Nordisk's patent for semaglutide products, including Ozempic and Wegovy, expired January 4th. A study suggesting supervised consumption sites are not linked to long-term crime increases is welcome news for a Winnipeg business manager. Researchers at McGill University looked at police data near 9 locations in Toronto that have since closed. Dylan Shirley manages an auto body store near the location of Winnipeg's proposed supervised drug consumption site.
If the studies have been made and people have done it and it's at least improved the situation in any factor, then yeah, that's great news actually. So if we can see any improvement at all, I'd be happy to see that.
The McGill study found there were some increases in crime after opening of the sites, but over time, there were neutral to positive improvements in local crime trends. Former Manitoba PC leadership candidate Wally Dowdrich has asked a court to restore his company's ability to take tours to see polar bears near Churchill. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
Dowdrich and his company Lazy Bear Expeditions has filed a claim with Manitoba's Court of King's Bench alleging 2 Manitoba wildlife officials and 3 NDP cabinet ministers interfered with Lazy Bear's business. Dowdrich asked the court to restore 2 off-road vehicle permits for the Churchill Wildlife Management Area. Lazy Bear received the permits in 2020, but they were not renewed last year. Dowdrich claims the province conspired with Lazy Bear's competitors. He also claims he's the victim of discrimination due to his political beliefs. Dowdrich is also seeking financial damages. His allegations haven't been tested in court. No statement of defense has been filed. NDP cabinet spokesperson Ben Leahy said the government can't comment while another Dowdrich legal action is before the courts. A decision is pending on an earlier request by Dowdrich for a judicial review of the decision not to issue permits. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And not Winnipeg's night, although it started with promise.
Here's Perfetti! He shoots and scores!
Cole Perfetti in the first period on TSN as the Jets are first to strike against the Las Vegas Knights. Later that same period, though, Jets defenseman Hayden Fleury went hard into the boards after being hit by Vegas forward Keegan Colasar. The rink went silent while the 29-year-old was taken off the ice on a stretcher. Jets head coach Scott Arniel says Fleury was to spend the night in the hospital.
He does have a broken nose, so there's a few different things that kind of happen off it. So a little bit of everything. He obviously slammed his back, hit his neck, hit his head, and then obviously his nose.
The Jets go on to push that game into overtime, but could not eke out a win. The Vegas Golden Knights win 4-3. It is now Winnipeg's 10th straight loss. Next up, the Edmonton Oilers tomorrow at Canada Life Centre. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Did you see this? Were you watching the game last night?
I did see that, yeah.
Was
shocking.
It a moment?
Oh, just awful.
Yeah.
Just awful. I couldn't even, my husband and I just went, wow.
Yeah.
Like he just slid. It was like a long slide, but he slid hard and he went head first into the boards and his whole body then just kind of contracted. It was, the whole rink really did go silent.
It's so frightening. Yeah. It's so frightening. All right. Well, grateful for a bit of an update, at least this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's Heather Walls in our news center today. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're with our team here at Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. Thanks for being here. January 7th, Wednesday morning, and it feels like a beautiful, mild day in the middle of the spring, Abby.
Yeah, Marcy, I'll tell you, a mild winter morning down south with sunshine breaking through soon in most of the regions, but we're still seeing snow, dust in parts of the north. For Winnipeg right now, we're waking up to some misty conditions. That should clear as you get into the morning, and we will see our highs around -2 today, though temperatures for the morning is going to stay fairly steady between -8 and -5, and then towards maybe 3-4 p.m. we might hit that -2 high for the day. But you can expect light winds through the day and then some partly cloudy skies tonight. Just a slim chance of flurries would come overnight with a risk of freezing rain. Temperatures dips to -8 for tomorrow. In the Pembina Valley region, we're looking at sunny conditions also expected today, -3 at this time, waking up to misty conditions. You warm up to -1 later in the day. Brandon, colder, -18 at this time. Misty conditions there. You climb to -3 later in the day. In the Parkland region, Dauphin tracking it towards Russell and Roblin. We're looking at temperatures around -9 at this time. You're enjoying some clear skies. You see your high around -2. Plenty of sunshine in the forecast for you. For folks in the Interlake region, Gimli and surrounding communities, we're looking at -8 and misty stat. Also the sun coming out later. High will be around -4. And then in the north, we're looking at a bit of colder conditions there. The path, Flim starting between -20s to -22 as at this time. Clear skies you're getting. You warm up to -10 later, while folks in Thompson seeing light snow at this time at -16. A slim chance of flurries will come on and off for the rest of the day. You only get to -14 later, but for the wind chill, it feels like -24 this morning. For our friends around Tuduli Lake, we're looking at temperatures around -23 at this time. Slim chance of flurries in the forecast. You warm up to -18. And then for the folks around Churchill and the York region, we're looking at light snow falling there. We see temperatures around -22 at this time. You warm up to -19 later. So it's more like down south, clear skies, lots of sunshine on its way, and up north, we're seeing just light snow falling there. Winnipeg right now, we are at -9.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, the commute.
Quiet commute so far. I haven't heard of any major issues out there, but if you're walking, biking, driving, you see some, give me a call. That number 204-788-3093.
Was your run-in messy?
You know what? Not yet, actually. It was okay, actually. Okay. It was softer underfoot, but it wasn't sloppy. But I imagine the way home is going to be a different story.
All right, good to know. Chris Lee Ramlakan is here on CBC Next on 89.3 with our business news. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with TV in the States. The nonprofit that funded outlets like NPR and PBS is shutting down after 58 years. What does that mean? Can you break it down?
Yeah, so the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is a private agency that steered federal funding to hundreds of public TV and radio stations across the U.S., has voted to dissolve. So the organization has been winding down since Congress acted last summer to defund it at the encouragement of President Donald Trump. And this week, the board of directors chose to shutter completely instead of keeping in existence as pretty much a shell of itself. So the organization's president says it is trying to protect the integrity of the public media system by dissolving rather than allowing it to remain defunded and vulnerable to additional attacks. And the head of the board of directors says public media is critical to things like children's education, history, culture, and democracy. Now, many Republicans have long accused public broadcasting of being biased, but it wasn't until the second Trump administration with full GOP control of Congress that those criticisms actually turned into action. So now the corporation says it is financially supporting the American Archive of Public Broadcasting to preserve its historic content and is also working with the University of Maryland to maintain its records.
To another story, the most valuable company in the world is getting into the self-driving car business.
Yeah, that's right. So computer chip company NVIDIA says it is working with robotaxi operators in the hopes of having them use the company's AI chips and software to power autonomous vehicles as soon as next year. So in addition to chips that go inside the self-driving cars, NVIDIA also sells access to its AI chips and simulation software that automotive companies can use to train their self-driving models and develop technology. So NVIDIA says companies can use its chips to save on research and development costs and to get self-driving features to market faster. So in October, NVIDIA announced a robotaxi partnership with Uber. It also says it has developed software for Mercedes-Benz. And, robotaxis have caught on in the past year, led by Alphabet's Waymo, which is operating a commercial taxi service without drivers in 5 U.S. markets, including San Francisco.
And finally, briefly, the pizza business is getting cold?
Yeah, it seems so. So sales growth at pizza chains has been relatively flat since 2023, falling behind the wider fast food market. So pizzerias went from being the second most popular type of chain restaurant in the U.S. in the 90s to 6th last year in terms of sales. So the Wall Street Journal reports that coffee shops and Mexican food joints now outnumbers pizzerias, which kind of thinned out in the U.S. after hitting a record high in 2019. And why is this? Well, things like food inflation and weight loss drugs such as GLP-1s have been transforming the eating habits of people. And even when customers do choose pizza, executives from Papa John's say they tend to get smaller pies with fewer toppings. And while places like Domino's, kind of ride those pizza promotions to relative success, seems like there's always a deal at Domino's. But the owner of Pizza Hut is actually considering selling after 2 years of sales declines.
Yeah, we did some local reaction to that one here. Surprising how much local reaction there was. All right, thank you, Krista Lee.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
That's our business news on CBC with Krista Lee Ramlakan. Well, next on the show, the promise of a multinational force for Ukraine if a peace deal is reached with Russia is what came out of a summit of more than 30 countries in Paris yesterday, including Canada. That would include the deployment of French and British soldiers. It's something that Russia has already said it would never agree to. Also, everyone's watching U.S. President Donald Trump's comments about Greenland. So Andrew Rasulis is here next to talk about all of this. He's a retired official with the Department of National Defense and a fellow at the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. Good morning.
Morning, Marcy.
So just remind us what the Coalition of the Willing is and what their goals are around what we're talking about here, what I mentioned.
It's a group of countries that are best characterized as the West, meaning Europe, Canada, United States, and Australia. And basically their objective for about 3 years now, and since this war started, has been to try to provide Ukraine with resources to fight the war against Russia. So this includes like military equipment, financial support, training, and that kind of thing, as well as keeping the Ukrainian economy going. The idea being that to help Ukraine in its defensive fight, so that it wears down the Russians and eventually secures a peace deal and ceasefire that protects Ukrainian sovereignty.
So what kind of multinational force are they talking about to try to secure this ceasefire or peace?
Yeah, so importantly, this is not a combat force. This is a force that would go in predominantly French and British to provide training and logistics support to the Ukrainian military, which would be like the combat force. And these forces would be in nodal points in certain strategic areas of Ukraine, but they would not be subject to a combat mission, at least not at present. They would provide support to the Ukrainians, who would then be involved in a combat mission should a ceasefire fall apart.
And what is the plan to try and still get a ceasefire if Russia is, as I mentioned, not budging?
Yeah, the policy is more of the same. For about 3 years plus, the Coalition of the Willing has been targeting Russia with economic sanctions, and these sanctions have not had the desired effect in the sense that the Russian economy continues to do relatively well and is able to support the war. Now, that's primarily because the Russians are not isolated from the world; they're isolated from the West. They have other partners like China and India and North Korea and so on, that they can keep their economy going and keep the war fueled. Now, the supposition, I suppose, is, or the hope, is that in 2026, somehow these sanctions will have the effect that they're supposed to have, and the Russians will sue for peace.
And just looking at Greenland then, what do you make and what do you think that we're supposed to make of the Trump administration's comments about Greenland?
Well, I think the most important thing about Greenland is that it's yet another manifestation about the new American strategy, international strategy, which is Western Hemisphere, like a Monroe Doctrine, American interests first in the Western Hemisphere, and no aversion to using force to implement American interests. And basically, the thing with Greenland, like they used force in Venezuela, for example. And now in Greenland, they're not ruling out force, but Rubio has said that the first sort of option for the United States is to try and purchase Greenland. So we'll see where that goes.
Thank you very much for your time this morning, Andrew.
You're very welcome.
So you just heard Andrew Rasulis talking about Greenland, also talking about the Western Hemisphere, and here we are in the Western Hemisphere. We're going to have more analysis of this and what it might mean for Canada. Coming up with a professor from the University of Manitoba, Andrew Rasulis is a fellow with the Canadian Global Affairs Institute, and the latest on the developments of the day coming up on World Report. That is at 7 o'clock right now. It's 12 minutes to. Well, the Winnipeg Art Gallery is now free on Wednesday nights. You won't have to pay from 5 o'clock till close for the next 3 years, in fact, is the plan. So this is a new program. It is called WAG Wednesday Nights, and it's starting off with a bang. So they are hosting a launch party for their first one, and a Juno Award-winning artist is going to be performing at the event. Julia Lafreniere is the head of Indigenous Ways and Partnerships with the Winnipeg Art Gallery and joins us now via Zoom. Hi there.
Good morning. Hi.
So before we get into what you're doing for the very first Wednesday night, I have to ask about this image behind you. It's just beautiful. If people are watching on Zoom, what am I looking at?
Thank you. It's an image of an artwork by Alex Janvier. He was part of the Indigenous group of 7. He's a Dene artist that lived in Alberta, and he's one of my favorites. So I always try to feature him whenever I am able to on Zoom.
I'm so glad you're doing that. For the sake of our radio listeners, if you haven't seen the work, it's got these pale pinks and yellows, and it's very fluid and circular, and there's just something sort of spiritual about it. I love it. Tonight, who is going to be singing?
Begonia. So we're kicking off WAG Wednesday nights tonight with Juno Award-winning Polaris Music Prize nominated artist Begonia. She's going to be here this evening to help us kick off this new initiative at the Winnipeg Art Gallery.
I understand that this initiative has been something you guys have been hoping to do for some time.
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't been open in the evening for a few years now. And, we really want to make the Winnipeg Art Gallery accessible to everyone. But if you work 11 to 5 during the week or on the weekends, sadly, you might not be able to make it. So we're really, really grateful that we're able to be open in the evenings now every Wednesday for the next few years.
Is this, did this idea come because people sort of said, I'd like to come, but it doesn't feel accessible the hours? Is that where it came from?
Yeah, exactly. We try to be really responsive and engaged in community, and they expressed they wanted us to be open in the evening. So we made it happen, and we also are going to have dedicated programming every Wednesday evening to accompany the galleries being open for everyone to enjoy.
So starting with tonight, Begonia's performing, but what else is going to be happening at the event?
There's going to be DJ sets before and after Begonia by DJ Ollie Wan Kenobi. In the coming Wednesdays, there's going to be different things from curatorial tours and artist talks. We're going to have a retro video game night, jazz music performances, art making activities. There's going to be a cash bar. So we're really trying to make it the new midweek ritual for Winnipeggers.
Is it something that somebody might be thinking of the art gallery and they might be thinking of, quietly enjoying and absorbing the art? Are you intentionally trying to change the tone to make Wednesday nights feel different?
Well, you still can quietly enjoy the art. We have a few different exhibition spaces, and we're going to allow people to experience the art however they feel best doing it. If that's enjoying things quietly, then that's great. We have space for that, but we also have space to socialize and network with people, maybe a date night or a girls' night with some music and drinks and activities. So we're trying to make everyone feel welcome and comfortable and have offerings that everyone can enjoy.
It's interesting because this fits into some interviews we've been doing about Winnipeg. So I don't like to knock the city, but there's some criticism that we're not, the most nightlife exciting, especially in the winter months. It can be tough. People hunker in, hunker down, stay warm. And there's this whole move to sort of make downtown, more accessible and exciting. And I was talking to another city, and they actually have a nightlife mayor. And one of the things they said that is critical is kind of exactly what you guys at the WAG are looking at. It's thinking about those night hours, but it's also thinking about things like DJs and using space in a different way. What would you say to someone who has never even been maybe downtown at night or wouldn't consider going to the WAG about why they should think about leaning into it?
Well, our winters are long and cold and dark here in Winnipeg. So it's something to help, get us through the winter. And there have been studies recently out of the UK that looking at artwork can really help enhance, boost, or improve people's mental health. So we obviously believe that at the Winnipeg Art Gallery. And we really are grateful that we're able to offer this type of programming to help contribute to maybe the betterment of the lives of people in Winnipeg or visiting Winnipeg.
What's the response been from the when you've reached out to artists to perform or be part of the WAG Wednesdays?
Well, they're really excited. And now that word is getting out, we're having musicians and artists contact us to ask if they can be a part of it. So we have really exciting things planned, and we're really happy to be part of the community that's able to make this offering to Winnipeggers.
Well, very cool that we're talking about something new. But in the bigger picture, as a last question, what are you most looking forward to at the WAG this year as we flip to the new year and you think about the things going on that are beautiful at the WAG?
Well, we have some really great exhibitions coming up. And that's the great thing about working in an art gallery, is that the exhibitions always switch up. So if you've been a few months ago or you haven't visited in like a year, there's going to be a new exhibition to experience. So we really have some exciting exhibitions coming up that are able to address some of, maybe the difficulties going on in the world. So that's what I'm most excited for, to be able to create conversation around difficult issues in a safe way.
Well, people can lean into that schedule and those new things as the year goes on online. In the meantime, they can enjoy tonight. Thank you so much for being here with us on the show today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Julie Lafreniere, the head of Indigenous Ways and Partnerships for the Winnipeg Art Gallery. That event tonight from 5 to 9. Begonia's playing. Here she is with Hotter Than the Sun.
Quick to tend to, others overwhelm me, yeah. All often therapized, then intellectualized. Why there's something inside that makes me wanna hate myself. My need for validation, self-asphyxiation of my medication. Oh, and then an everyday sedation. My sexual frustration on cigs at service stations.
So we're just teasing you with some Begonia. You're going to see her tonight. It's free at the WAG as they begin free Wednesdays, the Winnipeg Art Gallery. How fun is that going to be? Still ahead in the next hour, speaking of fun, on our medical column, you ever wonder why people sneeze a certain number of times? Or why does our leg hair not grow as long as head hair? Those are questions from kids. Dr. Raj Bardwaj is going to answer some of those coming up in the next hour of the show. Also in the next hour of Information Radio, as we've been mentioning, between seizing Venezuela's president and threatening to potentially take Greenland by military force, how concerned should Canada be about our sovereignty? We're going to hear from an expert in international law who's over at the University of Manitoba. So stay tuned. That is coming up. Let's get into the news this morning. Heather Wells is in with headlines.
Good morning. Well, federal, provincial, and Indigenous leaders are all traveling today to Pimicikamak Cree Nation. This days after the chief requested military help recovering from a 4-day power outage and the ensuing damage from that lack of power. Things like schools, the arena, youth center, all are damaged and the community's plant is frozen. Chief David Monias hopes Army engineers can take on some of those repairs. Some Winnipeg parents are giving a failing grade to a plan by a city councillor to limit the amount of time they spend picking up or dropping off their children from school. The proposal by Marcus Chambers would require drivers to make that transfer within 60 seconds. We'll hear reaction in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
You're also giving us an earful on Facebook about what you think of this. If you want to call and let us know what you think, you can always call the listener line at 204-788-3205. Marcus Chambers is also going to be live with us in the next hour, just before 8, so stay tuned. Lots still ahead on the show this Wednesday morning. It's misty and -9 in Winnipeg. It will be mild across southern Manitoba, high of -2 is what we're expecting in Winnipeg. The drive's been good, as you can imagine. Feels kind of like a warm March day in the middle of spring more than January. You can call us if you need to as well. That line is different. It's the commuter line. Call Corey, 204-788-3093 if anything's problematic out there that we should be reporting. And that's not just Winnipeg. That's on the highways or any of the cities and communities across Manitoba. So let us know. World Report's coming up next. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You are with CBC.
On the Current,
CNBC will get a referral fee for funneling new customers toward this prediction market.
Sports betting is almost everywhere these days, but have you heard about news betting? Well, now people can wager real money on real-world events. We'll talk about what the implications of that could be and why two major U.S. news networks have struck deals with a prediction market company coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Stephanie Skandaris. The world is watching as U.S. President Donald Trump weighs his options for Greenland. Among them, using military force to take over the island. The White House says acquiring Greenland is a national security priority. But as the CBC's Juanita Taylor reports, people in the self-governed Danish territory say they deserve respect, and Trump needs to end his takeover threats.
We don't want to be Americans. We are Galashiq. We are Greenlanders.
That's Sarah Ozempic, chair of the Inuit Circumpolar Council in Nuuk, Greenland, an international NGO representing 180,000 Inuit of Greenland, Canada, Alaska, and Chukotka in Russia.
Inuit have been fighting for the self-government arrangements for our rights.
Ozempic rejects U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to take over Greenland.
People of Galashiq Nunaat and Inuit, we have already been through colonization, and we know what it means when the interests of others and more powerful nations and peoples affects us negatively.
Trump has had his eye on Greenland since his first term.
We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security.
In a statement issued Tuesday, the White House said it's discussing options to acquire the island as a national security priority necessary to deter our adversaries in the Arctic region.
It is actually a shock that this could be real, that this could happen.
Ayu Peter is a Greenlander living in Iqaluit since 1981.
It is causing a lot of fright and a lot of uncertainty for the people of Greenland because we are so small.
The White House says using force to annex Greenland is an option, but Sarah Ozempic says Greenland is a peaceful region.
We demand a dignified dialogue based on diplomacy and cooperation.
Governor General Mary Simon and Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand will visit Greenland in February. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Rankin Inlet, Nunavut.
European leaders will be meeting today to discuss the U.S. threat to take over Greenland. The island falls under the administration of Denmark, a NATO member, giving it protection. But the U.S. is the largest and strongest member of the defensive alliance. And as Crystal Gomansing reports, several countries are already feeling the pressure from the war in Ukraine.
If there was a requirement to defend Greenland, European members of NATO and Canada would be really pushed to do so.
General Richard Sheriff, a former Deputy Supreme Allied Commander of NATO forces, says there must be a demonstration of unified strength, but acknowledges forces are limited even with recent increases in defensive spending.
To scotch the threat of an American takeover, Europe must also step up to the mark and not just talk.
Leaders in Greenland and Denmark have said the threats from the U.S. must stop. They've requested to meet with U.S. officials. Meanwhile, a statement of support was issued yesterday from 5 European leaders and the Prime Minister of the U.K. It stressed Arctic security is important to them as well and must be achieved by NATO allies working collectively. The Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen, warned any military action, which, according to the White House, is one option on the table, would be the end of NATO.
Russia would be delighted.
Ben Wallace, a former UK defense minister, links the troubles in Greenland to Ukraine and destabilizing threats from Russian President Vladimir Putin.
That territory itself will become a token of how Putin is going to try and further divide us.
The foreign ministers from France, Germany, and Poland will be meeting today as Europeans consider next steps. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
Congratulations to your nation, to you personally.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky there congratulating the president of Cyprus. The country has taken over the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union. Zelensky will be attending a ceremony to mark the event. He'll also be attending some high-level meetings with President Nikos Christodoulidis and with EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Zelensky is expecting to continue Ukraine's campaign to join the EU after saying the Cypriot presidency could be significant. It comes on the heels of yesterday's meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, which includes Canada. They released a joint declaration reaffirming their commitments to Ukraine. It says that Ukraine's ability to defend itself is critically important to ensuring the future of the Euro-Atlantic's collective security. State media is reporting Iran has executed a man convicted of spying for Israel. Ali Ardestani was accused of sharing sensitive information with the Mossad in exchange for cryptocurrency. Iran and Israel have been in a decades-long shadow war, and Tehran is known to have executed 12 people for espionage since June. Human rights groups condemn its growing use of capital punishment. They say many convictions rely on coerced confessions. Donald Trump says Venezuela will be turning over $2 billion worth of crude oil to the United States. On social media, Trump said that oil will be sold at market price and that he personally will ensure the money benefits the people of both countries. Venezuela has a glut of oil it hasn't been able to sell since the Trump administration imposed a blockade on its oil tankers. The backlash to all this U.S. intervention is building in Caracas and next door in Colombia. Paul Hunter has that story.
With the sound of support for Nicolas Maduro on the streets of Caracas still echoing through Venezuela after this rally for the now ex-president yesterday, fresh demonstrations are set for today to play out in the country next door, Colombia, where Colombian President Gustavo Petro has called for national protests against Donald Trump after Trump's move on Maduro on the weekend and the suggestion he may soon go after Petro, Trump citing drug trafficking from Colombia as the issue. The Colombian president yesterday posting on social media, Trump has a senile brain, adding, anyone who voted for him voted for a greedy outlaw. In Caracas, defiance continues in Venezuela's parliament, where yesterday newly sworn-in interim president Delcy Rodriguez labeled Trump's action against Maduro unprecedented aggression. All of this underlining tensions throughout the region continue to escalate. Last night in Cucuta, Colombia, right on the Venezuelan border, Colombia's military showed off its soldiers and armored personnel carriers for journalists. Some 30,000 troops have been deployed along the border with Venezuela. At the ready is the message, just in case. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Cucuta, Colombia.
Inuvik is in the middle of a deep freeze, but people living in the northern Arctic community are being asked to turn down their heat to conserve propane. Inuvik Gas says there has been an unexpected reduction in its fuel supply, and winter weather is limiting road access. The current temperature is about minus 40, minus 60 with wind chill. People are being asked to use their ovens less often, take fewer hot showers, and close their blinds to help retain heat. They're also being encouraged to work from home so the temperature can be turned down in office buildings. Researchers looking at neighborhoods in Toronto say overall crime rates plateaued or even declined after a supervised injection site was brought in. As Jennifer Yoon reports, the research contradicts what the Ontario government's been saying during its push to close those sites.
It's the worst thing that could ever happen to a community.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford on banning supervised injection sites near schools back in August 2024. His government insisted they were linked with higher crime rates. Now, a study is offering data to the contrary.
Crimes did not increase.
McGill University professor Dimitra Panagiotoglou tracked robberies, assaults, and grand thefts around several Toronto safe injection sites. Except break-ins, she says crime rates either stayed the same or even declined.
We do see variability across sites. But what I want people to do is look at sites where crime went down from the beginning.
It kind of proved anecdotally what we have been seeing or experiencing.
Keith Hambley is the CEO at Fred Victor Centre, one of the safe injection sites in the study.
There's always going to be a bit of friction. I think we are there to be a good neighbor, to hear people, what their concerns are.
That site is still open, but most of the injection sites have now closed. And this new data doesn't appear to be changing Ontario's policy, according to a statement from the government.
My hope is that, one, it opens the door to more conversations.
Panagiotoglou wants more research on other factors that affect how safe people feel near injection sites. She's also hoping her work so far will be helpful beyond Toronto, as cities across Canada battle the toxic drug crisis. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Stephanie Skandaris. This is CBC News.
Well, make a plan in southern Manitoba, if you live here, to go for a walk today. The north a little colder, but it is going to be the mildest day we've had in some time. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday, January 7th. It feels like a beautiful spring day. I'm Marcy Marcusa on CBC. This is 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. Well, maybe you'll be walking your kids to school, but if not, and you're dropping them off, could you do it in a minute? A lot of people talking about this one. A minute time limit for parking during pickups and drop-offs at elementary schools in Winnipeg. Is it realistic? One city councillor says it will make the process safer and faster. That is Marcus Chambers. He will join us live this hour to talk about it. You are writing into us on Facebook about it today, and we invite you to call as well. 788-3205. In addition, this hour, a special edition of our medical column. Dr. Raj Bardwaj took questions from students and young people, the best of the year from 2025, and he will answer them. Things like, why do we sneeze a certain number of times? Why is it sometimes the same as our relatives? And why does our leg hair grow not as long as the hair on our head? Questions that come from kids, and Dr. Bardwaj will have those answers in our medical column. Right now, let's go to Heather Welsh. She's in our news center with other headlines. Good morning.
Well, a Winnipeg business owner says a study does not change her view on a supervised consumption site proposed for Winnipeg. Marla Murphy at Ultimate Wheel works on Logan Avenue and worries about how the proposed Henry Avenue site will impact that area. A study recently published by McGill University found supervised consumption sites are not linked to long-term increases in crime. The use of the diabetes and weight loss drug Ozempic is on the rise in Manitoba. Provincial data shows the pharmacare program has covered the cost of more than 20,000 new claims each year since 2021. We're going to hear from one person who has benefited coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Let's get into what's going on in this mild day. Abby.
Yeah, it's a mild one in southern Manitoba for sure, but we're still seeing frosty conditions up north. Winnipeg, those foggy conditions already clearing. We're seeing clear skies at this time. -9. The fog patch is already moving out. Temperatures will not move much this morning. We're going to see it stay between -8 and a -5. However, before we get to that high of a -2 for today, we're just going to stay between -8 and a -5. Our high would be -2 for Winnipeg. Some sunny conditions will come through the day. For the southern region, similar conditions. We're going to see more like misty stats and then clear skies, lots of sunshine today with highs between -1 and a -5. Up north, it's more like colder conditions. We're seeing -23s and highs will only be around -14. But Winnipeg right now, we are at -9. It is clear outside, sunshine on its way, and we're heading to a high of -2.
Lovely. All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Into the commute we go. Corey.
Yes, very quiet commute so far this morning. I actually haven't heard of any major issues. It may get kind of slushy out there for sure, so you may want to top up that window washer fluid. Other than that, though, if you're walking your bike and you're driving, you see something, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Well, it has just been a few days since the U.S. military hit Venezuela with a large-scale strike and removed President Nicolas Maduro, and its complications and implications are still being felt. Canada's former ambassador to the UN says the military action, U.S. military action in Venezuela should be a wake-up call for our country to take threats of its sovereignty seriously, especially with Donald Trump's previous statements about making Canada the 51st state. Donald Trump has previously made threats to annex Greenland and force regime change in Cuba and Colombia as well. CBC's David Cochrane spoke to Bob Rae, who is the former ambassador to the United Nations, on power and politics. Now, this conversation's getting a lot of attention, and we just pulled another clip from it to set up our next interview, because here's what Bob Rae had to say.
We do have to wake up. This is not business as normal, and this is not politics as usual. You don't go around threatening peaceful countries like Denmark and Greenland. You don't go around threatening your neighbors like Mexico. And as for us, well, some might take comfort from the fact that the president has not yet said anything publicly one more time about the 51st state. But I, for one, am absolutely convinced that the president of the United States firmly believes that Canada should be part of the United States. And we also need to understand the problem with the way in which these events have unfolded over the weekend and the things that have been said is that if one regional power says, well, here's my doctrine and this is what we're going to do, what stops the other regional powers from saying exactly the same thing?
Right.
I mean, the Russians and the Chinese will use the Security Council to condemn what the Americans do. But you know what I think? I think that privately they're just rubbing their hands.
Bob Rae, former Canadian ambassador to the United Nations, in conversation with CBC's David Cochrane. So should Canada be worried or not? Well, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says, quote, he's deeply concerned that the rules of international law have not been respected, unquote, by the U.S. Guterres said in a statement that the, quote, grave action could set a precedent for future relations between nations. Last hour on the show, Andrew Rasulis was with us. He's a retired public servant and fellow with the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. He believes that Trump's comments about Greenland and the administration's comments about Greenland is a red herring. Has everyone talking, but Trump's real focus is Latin America. So there's a lot of people weighing in on this. Let's hear from Brian Peeler next. He's an assistant professor here in Manitoba of political studies and international law over at the University of Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So what are your thoughts on all of this in terms of how we should, we just heard from Bob Rae there saying U.S. military action in Venezuela shows Canada should take threats seriously. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually think Bob Rae is correct here that we ought to be taking this very seriously. The threat against Denmark, Steve Miller was going on about this over the last couple of days, an important advisor to Mr. Trump about how, we're going to take Greenland. We need it for our, strategic purposes. Denmark and Greenland are already part of an alliance with the United States under NATO. They don't need to have it for strategic purposes. It is part of an alliance that is there. Denmark came to the U.S. aid when it was attacked on 9/11. There's already, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, like you said, if this is what they can do, then why? It's the exact same reasons Russia has given for invading Ukraine. China might do the same thing about Taiwan. These people just like to use, the threat of the use of force and use force in a sort of performative way. It's, we ought to be worried about this.
The average Manitoban might be, thinking about the border, thinking about, okay, North Dakota's right there. And, they're seeing the maps up, talking about the Western Hemisphere and the U.S. officials out front saying, we need to control these resources. And there we are, Canada, right on the map. How should the Canadian government be responding to this then?
Well, again, next go on the map. The United States may be thinking we've got lots of fresh water for data centers that AI people may need at some point in the future. So I think we should be worried. We may be further down on the list than other Central American countries and possibly Denmark, but we ought to be worried here.
And in terms of people might be worried about thinking it seems incredulous in some ways that Prime Minister Mark Carney would be, somehow taken, overthrown, taken as Maduro was. But I wonder talking about the Prime Minister and his response, what should his response be, do you think?
Yeah, it was a kind of a milquetoast response the other day, quite frankly. And the leader of the opposition was full support of this. but they should be asked, right? What if something like this were to happen to you? Would you support this then? Recall all the talk about fentanyl coming into the United States via Canada for the last several months. Are we going to? Should we be expecting strikes on boats in the Great Lakes? I mean, there is you're right. It is kind of incredulous, and it probably wouldn't happen. But when people show you often enough who they are, you at some point have to start believing them. There is a worry here, and I think the Prime Minister needs to take a stronger stance against this sort of thing, rather than saying, well, Maduro was an illegitimate leader, and we support the new, helping the Venezuelan economy. But I mean, the regime is in Venezuela is the same regime that was there the other day. It's just the head of state is gone. So there's the instability that this creates in the international system doesn't benefit anyone.
As you said, though, that word and the word that I used, incredulous, is there's been a lot of things that have seemed incredulous that actually are now, as Bob Ray said, now are things that we need to reset ourselves in terms of what reality could be. The U.S. has done something like this in the past. When you think about Venezuela, of course, Panama in the 1980s, Iraq in 2002-3. What is different when you're watching how this is unfolding in Venezuela?
Well, that's an excellent question, because the Noriega example comes up as a, reason to say, well, look, this has happened before. The U.S. has done this before, but people forget that when Noriega was taken, that was roundly condemned by the international community as well. Even though the regime at the time in Panama supported this because they wanted to be rid of Noriega. Noriega was eventually given prisoner of war status by U.S. courts because of this activity. So I think we have to remember what exactly happened in that Noriega case. I think that's the real precedent here, too. And again, we have to remember that Venezuela still recognizes Maduro as the head of state. And head of states have what we call head of state immunity in the international system. They can't be taken by other countries and tried in courts for crimes that are apparently committed in those countries.
Brian, thank you for giving us some context here for all of this. It's on a lot of people's minds, and I think it's sort of one of those things that we're just sort of seeking to understand. So thanks for helping us through it.
You're very welcome. Thanks very much.
That's Brian Peeler with us live, Assistant Professor of Political Science and International Law at the University of Manitoba.
If it happened today, find out today. That's the power of having the news in your hand. Get late-breaking news from reporters across the country, straight to your mobile device. Customize your experience with news from your region and what matters to you. Whether it's big headlines, detailed articles, live events, or on-demand video, CBC News has got you covered. Connect to the world. Download the free CBC News app or visit cbcnews.ca.
Let's get into the commute here. Shay called the commuter line. He said the emergency vehicles are blocking the two right lanes on Sherbrooke. So this is between Broadway and Portage. So stay left. This is two right lanes on Sherbrooke between Broadway and Portage are blocked. So keep left. Call if you need to and update 788-3093. Well, before morning sports this morning, we'll get an update on the Jets' 10th loss in a row. And also a scary moment on the ice for one of our Jets players as well. So that's coming up in Sports and Moments. But we have a little bit of music. This actually comes from a bit of a story. The song explores the odyssey of a young woman's supernatural encounter somewhere near the sleepy Lake Winnipeg beach town. From Luna Moth.
Don't know you or where you are. Can you hear? I hope you've won. Don't know you or where you've gone. Can you hear me? Got warmth like yours. Where did you go wrong? Can you hear me? Have we met before? I'm other things. Who got left behind? Speak to me down his eyes. Don't say, speak to me. Please speak to me.
Okay, interesting music. I did a terrible job of introducing that, by the way, and here's why. That is Luana Moth, local Manitoba artist. The tune is Luna Moth, so I apologize for that mistake. But interesting. We were saying in studio, it sounds like it's got like Bjork vibes there. It is 7:25 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 9:90 a.m. and on the app or YouTube. It's clear. It's -9 in Winnipeg. Brandon's clear and -18, but you're going to get the same kind of warmth as Winnipeg. In fact, your high is -3. Winnipeg's -2. You just have a farther way to go to get warmer. Thompson is snowing lightly and in -15 right now is the current temp. Well, Claude Fag is in for Scott Reguera this morning. It's time to turn our attention to morning sports. Hi there, Claude.
Good morning, Marcy. Nice to be back with you, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. So a different night, different opponent, but unfortunately the same result for the Jets.
Yeah, Marcy, with exactly half a season to go in the NHL, the Jets are on course to rewrite history, and not in a good way. After winning the President's Trophy as the league's best regular season team last year, the Jets are currently in free fall and dead last in the NHL standings. Only one other team can lay claim to that dubious first to worst distinction in a single season. That's the 1942-43 New York Rangers. Last night, the Jets lost their 10th straight game, 4-3 in overtime, to the visiting Vegas Golden Knights. It's the first 10-game slide by the franchise since it returned to Winnipeg almost 15 years ago. Now, pretty certain head coach Scott Arniel wasn't quoting the funny and sweet 1993 movie that stars Bill Murray when describing his team's latest loss.
The chances that we had and the looks that we had, and yeah, I mean, this is just Groundhog Day, right? It's something happens. It's, you know, these things seem to be happening a lot recently, so just got to stay with it. I know it's hard to say and hard to hear, but we got to find a way. Yeah, I mean, now we're 12 seconds away from, getting out of that one.
And the Jets are back at it tomorrow night as they host the surging Edmonton Oilers.
And you can read more about Hayden Fleury. A lot of people had a moment last night. He has a broken nose, and we understand. And he got, hit into the boards pretty hard. So it was, pretty scary.
Right. There was some nervous moments there for sure.
Yeah.
The crowd apparently was hushed. There was a lot of concern, as always, when you see somebody go down. Hopefully he's in better shape today. That's for sure.
And as I mentioned, cbc.ca/Manitoba with that local story on our Winnipeg Jets. Let's go to another story here in sports. Several Canadian World Cup soccer hopefuls are going to get another chance to impress later this month.
Yeah, that's right, Marcy. So it certainly appears Canada's core men's roster for the upcoming World Cup this summer is pretty much set. In just over a week, some North American-based players vying for some of those roster spots will get a chance to impress as Canada plays Guatemala in a friendly in Los Angeles. Now, the Guatemalans are currently ranked 94th by FIFA in the world rankings. Canada is 27th. Now, one of the locks on the team is Ottawa's Jonathan David, currently playing for historic Juventus in Serie A.
Big chance for Jonathan David, and he has scored. And this rewards what has been a fantastic performance from the Canadian, and what a show of character it's been.
Now, David's goal and a helper helped beat Sassuolo 3-0 yesterday, and it came just days after he endured plenty of heat from the Juventus faithful and media after he missed a penalty kick in a draw last Saturday. David was mobbed by his teammates after scoring that goal and said he was very thankful for the support.
And Blue Jays go very far east to land their latest signing.
Yeah, that's right. So the Blue Jays continue to add talent. This time, the Jays introduced Kazuma Okamoto. He's a 29-year-old Japanese star who can play third base and the outfield. He signed for 4 years and $60 million. He's a six-time All-Star in Japan and hit 248 career home runs. And how, might you ask, did he decide to come to play for the Jays instead of every other Major League Baseball team?
何より強く世界一になれる
Well, first of all, I think he loved the city of Toronto, and then obviously the team is very strong, so he thought there was a lot of support there. But the one thing that stuck in his mind is that he put all 30 logos of MLB teams in front of his daughter and said, which one do you like the most? And she pointed out the Blue Jays, so that stuck in his head the whole time.
So clearly very scientific. Now, the Jays still do have interest in infielder Bo Bichette, who's a free agent, and also perhaps Kyle Tucker. But either way, certainly looks like the Jays are playing for keeps.
All right, Claude, thank you.
All right, Marcy, have a great day.
Yeah, you too. That's Claude Fagan for Scott this morning, for Scott Regehr. Coming up to news time, the traffic situation's been fine so far, 788-3093. We have a special edition of our medical column coming up and answering questions, the best questions of 2025 from kids about medical things, like a 13-year-old boy who wants to know why his voice cracks or find out why chewing gum is it good or bad for us. Dr. Raj Bardwaj after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is -9. We are going to be melting today, or very close to it. -2 is our high today as the sky clears out. The seasonal high is -13, so much warmer than normal. Government leaders will visit Pimicikamak Cree Nation today, days after the chief requested military help to recover from a 4-day power outage. Yesterday, the province echoed the chief's request in a letter to the federal government. David Monius says only a small percentage of the more than 1,300 homes in Pimicikamak have been looked at by maintenance staff. He says 2 schools, the arena, the youth center, all are damaged. The community sewage plant, frozen. Monius says 4,000 people are still out of their homes indefinitely.
We have no place to put these people if we're in the middle of fixing their house. And that's why we can't have them return right away, because we need the space to be able to identify, assess, and actually fix up the houses.
Monius hopes Army engineers can take on some of the repairs. Some Winnipeg parents are giving a failing grade to a plan to limit the amount of time they spend picking up or dropping off their children from school. The proposal would require drivers to make those transfers within 60 seconds in designated zones outside elementary schools. One parent, Aradia Gibbons, outside La Vérendrye School, doesn't see how it'll work.
A lot of people have more than just one child, and so imagine having to take a toddler out of the car seat, and especially with the laws, right, taking off the jackets and everything, then you're having to put on the jackets and try to hustle your kid into school, and that's way more than just 1 minute.
Councillor Marcus Chambers says his proposal is meant to reduce traffic congestion and unsafe behavior that would put kids at risk. It also calls for clearer signage and stepped-up enforcement during peak school hours. The Riel Committee is set to debate this motion today. A Winnipeg business owner says a study doesn't change her view on a supervised consumption site in Winnipeg. Marla Murphy at Ultimate Wheelworks on Logan Avenue worries about how the proposed Henry Avenue site will impact the area. She says her business already deals with lots of crime committed by people using drugs.
No reasoning with them when they're in psychosis, and to support something to enable them to partake of their illegal substances, which used to be illegal and as far as I know still is, to encourage that behavior and enable it just blows my mind.
A study recently published by McGill University found supervised consumption sites are not linked to long-term increases in crime. Researchers examined 9 Toronto supervised drug consumption sites that opened starting in 2017 and closed last year. While there was an initial jump in break-and enters near some sites, over time those reports declined. Use of the diabetes and weight loss drug Ozempic is on the rise in Manitoba. Provincial data shows the pharmacare program has covered the cost of more than 20,000 new claims each year since 2021. Hartley Macklin isn't surprised. He's been using Ozempic since 2018 when he was pre-diabetic.
I've lost between 70 and 80 pounds. That has a huge effect on your lifestyle and what you can do and travel and just driving somewhere. cars are not built for 320-pound people.
Health Canada recommends Ozempic for treatment of type 2 diabetes, but many people also use it to lose weight. Generic versions of that drug are expected to hit the Canadian market this summer. Former Manitoba PC leadership candidate Wally Dowdrich has asked a court to restore his ecotourism company's permits to operate off-road polar bear viewing vehicles. Dowdrich and his company Lazy Bear Expeditions filed a statement of claim with Manitoba's Court of King's Bench in late December. He wants the court to order the province to restore 2 off-road permits for the Churchill Wildlife Management Area. Lazy Bear was granted 2 vehicle permits in 2020, but they were not renewed last year. Coming close, but still no win. Kyle Connor in the third period there on TSN with the goal that put the Jets ahead of Vegas, but the Knights scored, forcing overtime, and then handing the Jets another loss. 4-3 the final. The losses are now in the double digits, 10 in a row. Coach Scott Arnio.
All the chances that we had and the looks that we had, and yeah, I mean, this is just Groundhog Day, right? It's something happens. It's, these things seem to be happening a lot recently, so just got to stay with it. I know it's hard to say and hard to hear, but we got to find a way.
Jets defenseman Hayden Fleury was taken off the ice on a stretcher in the first period after going hard into the boards. The 29-year-old was hit by Vegas forward Keegan Colasar. Arneal says Fleury was to spend the night in the hospital for tests after slamming his neck, hitting his head, and suffering a broken nose. Next up, tomorrow, the Oilers are in town. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
So our mild forecast for all the regions coming up in just a moment. But first, let's add some comments to what you heard in the news. Marcus Chambers will be on the show this half hour live, the councillor that's calling for 1-minute drop-off zones around schools. Now, in fairness, I asked for beefs, but these are comments from Facebook. So here's how I worded it. What are your beefs about Winnipeg school drop-off zones and what would make them better? So Erica Glazier wrote in and said, it's the skip the dishes driver phenomenon. People stop and park backwards on the wrong side of the road. They double park. Simply following traffic rules will be a start, she writes. These roads were not designed for what they're being used for, so nothing can probably improve them that much. Corey, you have some comments too there.
Yes, Mango Nibewe suggested that there should be huge fines for people illegally blocking traffic. Schools need to have their own drop-off pickup zones away from the streets, and they can be built from the funds raised from the fines in the meantime.
Jay Woolston weighing in on Facebook. My page, by the way, Marcy Marcusa, acts as a show page when we're on the air, so that's where these comments are coming from. Jay says, why are so many people feeling so entitled that they can just park anywhere they want? He writes, some parents wait for their kids in the back lane near our school. Why do some people who, along with their kids, are totally able to walk short distances, not park in a legal parking area and then walk with the no more than usual 2 minutes to get to the school?
I heard from Mel Marginet as well. She says, I grew up outside the city and personal vehicles were not allowed near the school unless there was a mobility issue. If you wanted to drive, you had to park away and walk in. I walked to school and am grateful for that experience. I wish our city was designed to make it safe and convenient for kids to walk and bike to school. My parents were pretty clear that they were busy and we were responsible to get to school.
All right, well, pass me those comments because we'll have to put some of this listener feedback to Councillor Chambers this half hour, and we'll also talk more about safety around zones. If you want to call, 788-3205, that is our listener line. If you want to weigh in ahead of that interview, it's coming up just before 8 o'clock. While Corey's here, do you want to just cover the commute?
Yeah, Pam called. We mentioned earlier about those emergency vehicles blocking those right lanes between Broadway and Portage. Now it's just that one lane. There's an ambulance blocking the far right lane on Sherbrooke between Broadway and Portage. Not too big a backup. Shouldn't be too big of an issue. But also got a call from the traveling Transconian who said there's a stalled truck blocking the curb lane on westbound Regent right outside the Burger King just before La Jamodière. So that may throw off your commute a little bit this morning. That's westbound Regent just before La Jamodière. Right lane is blocked. Haven't heard of any other major issues out there this morning. Pretty quiet. But if you do see something going on, be like Pam, be like the traveling Transconian. Give me a call. That number 204-788-3093.
And now to your regional forecast with Abby.
We're in for a mild day with lots of sunshine in the southern parts of the province, while up north we're going to see a few clouds and scattered flurries here and there. For Winnipeg right now, it is -9, clear outside, while the temperature temperatures won't really move much this morning. We're heading for a high of -2 later in the day as this fog patches clear from this part of the province. We see some sunshine later in the day, and then we get about -8 tonight. Similar conditions we're seeing in the Pembina Valley region. We're looking at temperatures around -3 at this time. Lots of sunshine on the way, high of -1. Brandon is sitting at -18. Clear skies you have. Sunshine also heading your way, -3 your high for the day. Dauphin, you're looking at partly cloudy conditions, -8 at this time. Sunshine pushing temperatures to -2 later today. Gimli sitting at -8 with cloudy conditions, and we'll see sunny conditions later this afternoon into the evening. You warm up to -4 later. For the powerful influence surrounding communities, we're looking at -21s to -23s. Sunshine will also bring you high to about -10 later. While Thompson is sitting at -15 with light snow right now. You should expect mainly cloudy conditions all day with a few flurries. Highs will be around -14 and 4. Churchill, we're looking at some ice crystals there. -21 at this time. You warm up to -19 later today. So it's more like mild and quiet for southern communities, while up north we're still seeing those, ice crystals in Churchill region. Winnipeg right now, -9, and it is clear.
All right, let's get into our medical column. Over the past year, Dr. Raj Bardwaj has been collecting health questions from kids. Some come from kids passing through the urgent care centre where he works in Calgary. Other questions are from the children he encounters in his day-to-day life. Dr. Bardwaj has made a list of the top questions of 2025, and he's here now with the answers. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
Okay, let's get right in. Here's the first question from one of your inquisitive kids. Is chewing gum bad for you?
Yeah, good question. Short answer is that there are good and bad things about chewing gum, but most of both the good and the bad don't cause a lot of problems unless you're chewing gum a lot. And I get this not just from kids, but from parents as well. But in terms of the bad parts of chewing gum, the sugar in the gum can be bad for your teeth. But if you choose sugarless gum and if you brush your teeth twice a day like you're supposed to, then probably not much of an issue. The sugarless sweeteners, though, can be hard to digest, can maybe cause some stomach aches and bloating. But again, that's only for some people, and you'd have to be chewing quite a bit of gum for that to happen. Sometimes the intense chewing can cause jaw pain or even headaches, so there's that. And chewing gum has been found to release microplastics into your saliva. So we don't know if that's a significant risk to your health, but it is something to think about. Now, on the good side of chewing gum, sugarless gum can actually help to prevent cavities. So dentists often recommend chewing sugarless gum. And another interesting thing is that there are some studies that say that chewing gum might help us to concentrate and focus, especially for people who are doing boring stuff. So it's not a huge effect, but you might do about maybe 10% better on tests like remembering a list of words compared to if you weren't chewing gum. So
love it.
Chew on those facts.
Next question. Why do we sneeze a certain number of times in a row?
Isn't this fascinating? I usually sneeze twice in a row, but some people sneeze a bunch of times in a row. I was talking to a doctor friend of mine about this while I was trying to research this question. She said that she sneezes between 18 and 21 times in a row.
Wow.
And that her dad used to do that too. Really weird. So, first of all, what is a sneeze? It's a protective reflex. It's usually triggered by some irritation in your nose, but about 20% of people get sneezes that are triggered by bright lights. And that runs in families too. So if you have one parent that has it, you've got a 50-50 chance of also having it. And you might have noticed also that your sneezes sound like the sneezes of one of your parents. And that's a common thing. And that's because a lot of the anatomy and even nerve pathways of sneezes can be inherited. So once a sneeze is triggered, there are all these nerve signals that cause a coordinated muscle response that cause the sneeze. And that sneeze hopefully gets rid of whatever was tickling your nose. But sometimes it takes more than one sneeze to do that. Now, it's not as simple as that, though. It's not just about the nose irritation, because some people sneeze the same number of times no matter what. So one of the main ideas is maybe that it's the force of the sneezes together that sort of settle down the nerve irritation enough to stop triggering the ongoing sneeze reflex. So how many times in a row you sneeze might have less to do with what's in your nose and more to do with how sensitive your brain and nerves are to triggering more sneezes once they've triggered that first sneeze.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, here's one that I understand comes from a 13-year-old boy. He would like to know why sometimes his voice cracks.
Yeah, super question. Makes sense that it's coming from a teenager. So anyone's voice can squeak or crack once in a while. You know, it usually comes from stress or illness, but in teenage boys, it's often puberty. So when your voice works, what's happening is that you're getting vibration of your vocal cords. Those are two folds of tissue in your voice box called your larynx. And when you talk, the air gets pushed out from your lungs. It vibrates the vocal folds in a very particular way to create sounds of very specific pitches. And you can control your voice and you can hit notes, very, very specifically because we have good muscle control over that. Now, kids have higher pitched voices because they have shorter vocal cords or vocal folds, I guess, than adults. When you hit puberty, your vocal folds grow. They get longer and thicker, and you end up with a deeper, lower voice. And when you're in puberty, especially for boys, that sudden growth of your vocal folds means that you actually have a harder time controlling the pitch of your voice with those muscles. And then you can get this cracking, squeaking voice that is sometimes very awkward. So it can also happen when you're stressed or when you're anxious. Your vocal cords can tense up if you're not breathing properly. The other thing is if you get a cold and you get a virus and gives you laryngitis, that's literally inflammation of your voice box, and that's what gives you that sort of whispery, hoarse voice when you're sick with laryngitis.
All right, next question. Why does hair have a set length? For example, why don't my eyebrow hairs grow as long as the hair on my head? And then why does my dad have super long eyebrow hair? Not
good
my dad,
observation.
well, although my dad kind of does too, to be honest.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do. Yeah, I had this plan that when I started going bald, I had this plan that I was just going to grow out my eyebrow hair and comb it up. That didn't work out. It was a very bad plan.
It's a bad look, bad look. Didn't catch on.
So, yeah, each hair grows out of your skin from a root or a hair follicle. And each hair follicle goes through these cycles, these phases as it grows. So there's a growth cycle, and then there's this short phase between active growth and sort of just hanging out and resting. Then there's a resting phase. And then at the end of the resting phase, the individual hair falls out. So the length of each hair depends on the timing of each of those phases of the follicle that it's growing out of. So for eyebrow hair, the growth phase might last about 3 to 6 months. For hair on your scalp, the growth phase can be 6 or 8 years or longer. And the longer the phase, the longer your hair will grow. So different hair follicles in different parts of your body grow differently based on their genetic blueprint, based on things like hormones changes, based on stress, things like that. And that's why when some people get stressed, they sometimes notice that they start to lose the hair on their head. And in a similar way, your dad's long eyebrow hairs are probably staying in the growth phase longer as his hormone levels change with his age. And that's why you notice that they're longer than they used to be.
Good kid questions. Always love these segments. Thank you.
My pleasure. We'll talk to you next week.
That's our medical.
Now with CBC Radio 1, local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
Well, making news today, more than 80,000 people received prescriptions for Ozempic, a type 2 diabetes drug. Now, that number is a Manitoba number. So 80,000 people in 2024. It's in the news this morning. It's almost 5 times more prescriptions than the number of claims in 2021. So we're going to talk to a pharmacist after 8 o'clock about that number and what she makes of it, and also some of what she has to say about side effects and things you might want to think about. If you are on Ozempic or thinking of taking Ozempic, that's coming up after 8. Right now, 12 minutes to 8, and it is clear and -9 in Winnipeg. A mild day as we continue to remind you today, a -2 for a daytime high. It's going to clear this morning. Well, we continue to get tons of comments about an idea that has come up from a city councillor. Are you getting ready to drop off your children at elementary school today? What if you only had a minute to get them out of the car and on their way after pulling up outside the school? This is something that City Councillor Marcus Chambers wants the city to look at enforcing. He says there's too much congestion outside of schools right now, and it's not safe. We sent CBC's Jim Agapito to a co-laverandery over in Crescent Wood to talk to Winnipeg parents about what they think of a 1-minute time limit for pickups and drop-offs.
My name is Krista Nicholson. No, I don't think that's safe at all to just be rushing. And a big part of pickup is community. So you'd be missing out on a little chat with the teacher or checking in with the other friends of your kids. So no, I don't think that's safe.
Is it an issue right now, you think?
It is an issue that you like getting close, or traffic wise, like I've seen cars do risky things going around buses, or the stop signs out and they're still trying to get around. So there is an issue, yes.
Hi, my name is Aradia Gibbons. No, that's not realistic whatsoever. A lot of people have more than just one child, and so imagine having to take a toddler out of the car seat, and especially with the laws, right, taking off the jackets and everything, then you're having to put on the jackets and try to hustle your kid into school, and that's way more than just 1 minute.
Susan Moskovich. Yeah, absolutely not. Especially in an elementary school, parents need the opportunity to come, talk to the teacher, see how their child's day went, make sure they have all their items. And people like hanging out and talking. It's a community. So in elementary school, it's all about community, getting to know people. So basically you're taking that away from families if you make them leave. And also, how are you even going to enforce that? So are you going to have security guards here moving people off the premises? I just don't think it's realistic.
CBC's Jim Agapito at Laverandery School in Winnipeg. Well, St. Norbert, St. River City Councillor Marcus Chambers joins us via Zoom. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Marcy. How are you today? And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yeah, I'm fine. We're getting an earful from all kinds of people talking about this. How did you come up with a minute, and why do you think it's a good idea?
Well, every year that the school year starts, counselors are inundated with calls from area residents talking about the issue of drop off and pickup. Oftentimes their driveways are blocked. Oftentimes there's exhaust fumes. Oftentimes there's unsafe maneuvers that are happening in school zones. So this is a constant conversation year round, year after year, that we're trying to resolve through something of a more efficient service.
And why do you think 1 minute is long enough and a good way to do this?
Well, if kids are organized in the car on the way to school, they have their backpacks, their school books, their runners, their, whatever accessory they need for the school day. As long as they're organized in the car on the way to school, a minute it should be sufficient time to get your kid out of the car or pick them up at the end of the day. To sit around and linger like that, that's where we're seeing some of these increased, unsafe issues happening within that school zone.
So when you hear a parent, and we just heard from a parent, they're talking about the lingering, but, describing it as being important for community building and socializing at pick up and drop off, with parents and teachers. What is your message to, what you're thinking when you hear that?
Well, and I do get the part of community. I mean, I'm always about community, but, we are looking at trying to make it safe for school patrols, for other students that are, coming in, whether they're riding their bikes or walking to school. We want to make sure that the school zones are safe. So from that perspective, I think, hearing what residents have to say, having our public service, our Winnipeg Parking Authority go out and taking a look in terms of where applicable school zones can be utilized, and then working with the school divisions and working with the parents, coming up with a system that is efficient and safe.
I'll ask you in a moment specifically what you're asking city staff to do, but actually we do have a clip from Alan Campbell. He's president of the Manitoba School Boards Association.
the fact that most schools don't have like a designated drop-off lane. That's mostly happening on the curb, on the street in front of the school. In addition to that reality, you have winter. And so you have kids that are clamoring to get out of their cars, and you have parents that are clamoring to get out of the zone within the minute deadline. That's just a recipe for disaster.
So what are your thoughts on his comments that especially when we don't have, all schools don't have sort of a designated area, and even when there are designated areas, there can be problems, that the idea and looking at this across the board is going to be, in his words, a quote, disaster?
Well, and again, and I thank Alan for his comments. I mean, it is a matter of making sure that our public service is looking at all of those options, looking at pickup and drop-off zones that currently exist, looking at schools, schools that don't have adequate zones within their proximity, finding a way to make a fair balance in terms of, like I said, efficiency and safety is of the utmost. Like I said, if kids are organized on the way to school, up to a minute long should be sufficient to get them out of the car, having a teacher there to receive them, and then they're on their way.
What are you specifically asking city staff to do, to be clear here? Because if they're going out to assess the situation, are they assessing because you're going to build more school zones for pickups and drop-offs? Are they looking at where 1 minute is feasible, or what are they going to be doing in this next phase here?
Yeah, looking at the how practical it would be to implement this across all school zones, and recognizing not all schools are the same or their locations are not the same, but finding something that's the most practicable for them to establish that drop-off zone that, again, keeps school patrols safe and all of the other kids that are entering that school zone.
How would the city go about enforcing this plan? Because you mentioned, some expectation on school staff and teachers for helping out.
Well, the first part is education, making sure that parents are well aware of what their responsibilities are as they're entering that school zone. And then, as everybody is educated towards the protocols that are in place, then the enforcement comes for those that are non-compliant.
And the enforcement from whom, and how would that even be articulated? Or are people facing fines? Like, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, the parking authority, the teachers can, again, should have the authority to have cars moving along quickly. And again, if they're not in compliant, jotting down that license plates and sending it on into the Winnipeg Public Parking Authority.
Kev Roberts wrote to CBC, schools don't have the staffing to deal with this. Resources can be better spent. We really just need more adults helping kids learn to read, not policing drop-offs.
Well, the comments that I hear day in, day out, on an annual basis, this is problematic. And it's something that, again, in River Park South, unfortunately, a couple of days back, we had a young child that was struck by a vehicle. Recognizing this is winter and we've got snowbanks that are kind of piling high, it is a matter about safety. It is trying to make this system more safe so that less kids are impacted, as they're in school zones or like I said, riding their bikes or just walking to school.
We'll leave the conversation there. I know we'll talk again. Thank you very much for being with us, Councillor Chambers.
All right, Marcy, Happy New Year.
That is City Councillor Marcus Chambers. The Riel Community Committee, by the way, votes on this motion today. If passed, it does get presented then to the city's Public Works Committee. We obviously are hearing a lot from you. We'd like to hear more now that you've heard what the councillor has to say about his idea. 204-788-3205 is where you can weigh in. What is it like in your school drop-off pickup zone? What do you think would work better? And what do you think of the idea of a 1 minute turnaround or enforcement of fines potentially? So coming up on the show after 8, we hope you stay with us, because if you're thinking about taking Ozempic, you are certainly not alone. As you've been hearing in the news today, thousands of Manitobans take the drug. That number has been surging since 2021. There's some latest stats out. A pharmacist says she is going to explain the reason why, first of all, and her sense of why. She's going to talk about in Manitoba what it takes to get prescribed Ozempic. But she also says that some people might want to think twice before seeking this due to side effects. So this is all coming up after 8 on the show. Right now, 2 minutes to 8, and Heather Wells with headlines.
Well, federal and provincial, as well as Indigenous leaders, are all on their way this morning to Pimicikamak Cree Nation. A 4-day power outage has caused that community's water system to freeze. Pipes have burst. Sewage systems have frozen. The damage to the critical infrastructure has forced thousands to leave their homes. We'll hear more coming up. As well, a Winnipeg business owner says a study doesn't change her view on a supervised consumption site in Winnipeg. Marla Murphy at Ultimate Wheelworks on Logan worries about how the proposed Henry Avenue site will impact her area. A study recently published by McGill University found supervised consumption sites are not linked to long-term increases in crime. We'll hear more coming up at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
-9 in Winnipeg, clear high -2, and that's the way the day looks. Commute's been not too bad here. We do have southbound Henderson just before Gilmore. Stalled car 4 ways is blocking the median lane. Otherwise, update us at 788-3093. World Report is next.
Q.
Hey, I'm Talia Schlanger in for Tom Power. After the success of her memoir, Eat, Pray, Love, Elizabeth Gilbert was no longer anonymous, which made going to 12-step meetings difficult. She'll reflect on being addicted to love and affection and why she chose to tell the whole messy truth in her new book.
I don't think I was thinking. I think I was quite literally out of my mind.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Sports betting is almost everywhere these days, but have you heard about news betting? Well, now people can wager real money on real-world events. We'll talk about what the implications of that could be and why 2 major U.S. news networks have struck deals with a prediction market company. Coming up on The Current.
Using the United States military. President Donald Trump says the island is key to U.S. national security and that acquiring the self-governed Danish territory is now a priority. The CBC's Willie Lowry is in Washington. So, Willie, what is the latest?
Seemingly buoyed by its military success in Venezuela, the U.S. appears to be shifting focus to Greenland. U.S. President Donald Trump believes the U.S. needs it for security. U.S. media is reporting that Secretary of State Marco Rubio told lawmakers on the Hill that the U.S. was interested in buying the island. In a statement sent to CBC, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said, quote, "The president and his team are discussing a range of options to pursue this important foreign policy goal, and of course, utilizing the U.S. military is always an option at the commander-in-chief's disposal." There is bipartisan concern with both Democrats and some Republicans fearing what this might mean for long-standing international relationships.
These are our allies. You don't treat your allies this way. I mean, it's embarrassing. And by the way, most Greenlanders want to be Greenland. They don't want to be American. They want to be our allies, though. And it's creating a lot of anger and hurt with our friends in Europe.
The idea of invading Greenland would undermine and frankly just blow up the Atlantic Charter and NATO.
That was Republican Representative Don Bacon and Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen.
And so what are we expecting next?
Several European countries, including France, Germany, Spain, the UK, Poland, and Denmark, issued a strongly worded statement yesterday reaffirming support for Greenland and making clear that the future of the island is for Greenland and Denmark to decide, not the U.S. Denmark, meanwhile, has requested a meeting with Marco Rubio as it scrambles to figure out just how serious the U.S. is and what it can do to keep the U.S., a key NATO ally, happy without actually giving it what it wants.
Willie, thank you.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Willie Lowry in Washington. So, as we heard from Willie, the White House says acquiring Greenland is a national security priority. But people there say they deserve respect, and Donald Trump needs to end his takeover threats. The CBC's Juanita Taylor has that part of the story.
We don't want to be Americans. We are Galactic. We are Greenlanders.
That's Sarah Olsvig.
chair of the Inuit Circumpolar Council in Nuuk, Greenland, an international NGO representing 180,000 Inuit of Greenland, Canada, Alaska, and Chukotka in Russia.
Inuit have been fighting for the self-government arrangements for our rights.
Ozempic rejects U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to take over Greenland.
People of Kalaallit and Inuit, we have already been through colonization, and we know what it means when the interests of others and more powerful nations and peoples affects us negatively.
It is actually a shock that this could be real, that this could happen.
Ayu Peter is a Greenlander living in Iqaluit since 1981.
It is causing a lot of fright and a lot of uncertainty for the people of Greenland because we are so small.
The White House says using force to annex Greenland is an option, but Sarah Olsvig says Greenland is a peaceful region.
We demand a dignified dialogue based on diplomacy and cooperation.
Governor General Mary Simon and Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand will visit Greenland in February. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Rankin Inlet, Nunavut.
Donald Trump says Venezuela will be turning over $2 billion worth of crude oil to the United States. On social media, Trump said that oil will be sold at market price, and he personally will ensure the money benefits the people of both countries. Venezuela has a glut of oil it hasn't been able to sell since the Trump administration imposed a blockade on its oil tankers. The backlash to all this U.S. intervention is building in Caracas and also next door in Colombia. Paul Hunter has that story.
With the sound of support for Nicolas Maduro on the streets of Caracas still echoing through Venezuela after this rally for the now ex-president yesterday, fresh demonstrations are set for today to play out in the country next door, Colombia, where Colombian President Gustavo Petro has called for national protests against Donald Trump after Trump's move on Maduro on the weekend and the suggestion he may soon go after Petro, Trump citing drug trafficking from Colombia as the issue. The Colombian president yesterday posting on social media, Trump has a senile brain, adding, anyone who voted for him voted for a greedy outlaw. In Caracas, defiance continues in Venezuela's parliament, where yesterday newly sworn-in interim president Delcy Rodriguez labeled Trump's action against Maduro unprecedented aggression. All of this underlining tensions throughout the region continue to escalate. Last night in Cucuta, Colombia, right on the Venezuelan border, Colombia's military showed off its soldiers and armored personnel carriers for journalists. Some 30,000 troops have been deployed along the border with Venezuela. At the ready is the message, just in case. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Cucuta, Colombia.
Congratulations to your nation, to you personally.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky there congratulating the president of Cyprus. The country has taken over the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union. Zelensky will be attending a ceremony to mark the event. He'll also be attending some high-level meetings with President Nikos Christodoulidis and with EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Zelensky is expecting to continue Ukraine's campaign to join the EU after saying the Cypriot presidency could be significant. It comes on the heels of yesterday's meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, which includes Canada. They released a joint declaration reaffirming their commitments to Ukraine. It says that Ukraine's ability to defend itself is critically important to ensuring the future of the Euro-Atlantic's collective security. A winter storm is upending the lives of millions of people in Europe as it enters its third day. Snow, ice, and freezing temperatures are forcing flights to be cancelled and trains to be delayed. Dutch airline KLM is running short of de-icing fluid for its jets. It's cancelled at least 600 flights. In France, 5 people have been killed in road accidents. The snow has stopped bus and transport truck services in Paris. Officials are warning that'll disrupt supply chains and the delivery of fresh produce. Federal, provincial, and Indigenous leaders are expected to travel to Pimachikamak Cree Nation in Manitoba today. A days-long power outage has caused the water system to freeze. The community, which is 530 kilometers north of Winnipeg, has declared a state of emergency. The damage to critical infrastructure has forced thousands of people to leave their homes with no timeline as to when they can return. The chief has been asking for emergency logistical support from the Canadian Armed Forces. Today marks 1 year since the deadly Los Angeles fires. More than 30 people were killed, thousands of buildings destroyed, many of them people's homes. Now, 12 months later, one of the most devastated communities is starting to rebuild. Steve Futterman has more from Los Angeles.
This was a year ago tonight. There are several fires taking place right now. The Los Angeles fires ended up taking more than 30 lives and destroying more than 16,000 structures. A year later, in a few areas, there are signs of rebirth.
You know, we're not going away.
In this section of Pacific Palisades, you hear the sound of construction throughout the day. Many homes are being rebuilt. Sue Cole expects her home to be finished in the middle of the year.
I'm in a hurry to get the house done, but not really to move back quite yet because I don't want to be the only one.
Greg Cahill is one of the many construction workers on the job every day.
Mood is build, go. It is going to be a long process.
A very long process. Most lots where homes once stood remain flat with no rebuilding in sight. A year later, there is still lots of anger and lots of finger pointing. LA Mayor Karen Bass and the fire department have come under the most criticism for not responding fast enough. The new fire chief, Jamie Moore, says mistakes were made.
We've learned an awful lot from the Palisades fire. We've taken those lessons to really solidify our operations.
Last night,
we gathered tonight to remember.
The Pacific Palisades Presbyterian Church held a special service at its temporary location. Today, throughout Southern California, other events are being held to commemorate the 1-year anniversary. Steve Futterman, CBC News, Los Angeles.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Stephanie Skandaris. This is CBC News.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to have a nice mild day across southern Manitoba, and here in Winnipeg, certainly very mild. Thanks for joining us. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio. You are on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. This half hour on this show, Ozempic. A lot of people talking about it. It's the type 2 diabetes drug, and it is surging in Manitoba. We're going to hear from a pharmacist today who says you may need to be cautious about taking it, but we're also going to look at the numbers and why they're happening. More than 80,000 people got prescriptions for Ozempic in Manitoba in 2024. That's almost 5 times more than the number of claims in 2021. So that conversation is this half hour. Also, coming out of a conversation with Councillor Marcus Chambers just before 8, you have been calling us and writing to us about school drop-off zones and the idea that drop-offs and pickups at elementary schools, the councillor's idea, could be done in a minute. We're going to hear more from what you have to say about the reality of that and what it looks like on your morning drive. So stay tuned. That's all this half hour. Right now, Heather Wells is in with other updates on stories in Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, government leaders are on their way to Pimicikamat Cree Nation this morning, days after the chief requested military help to recover from a 4-day power outage. David Monius says only a small percentage of more than 1,300 homes in Pimicikamat have been attended to by maintenance staff. He says 2 schools, the arena and youth center, are all damaged, and the community sewage plant is frozen. Some Winnipeg parents are giving a failing grade to that plan to limit the amount of time they spend picking up or dropping off their children from school. The proposal would require drivers to make that transfer within 60 seconds in designated zones outside elementary schools. One parent tells CBC she doesn't see how it will work, especially for people with more than one child. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Let's get into what's happening in this weather today. Abby has the actual details in the forecast.
Definitely, Marissa. It's going to look like a bright and relatively mild Wednesday for the southern part of the province this morning. However, up north, we're still going to see some cloudy conditions and a risk of frostbite as you travel further north. For Winnipeg right now, -8 it is outside, mainly clear. Some early morning mist earlier. That's cleared off. Our temperatures will be staying steady between -8 and -5 for this morning before we reach a high of -2 on the some light winds, and then partly cloudy skies tonight with a slim chance of flurries and some freezing rain overnight. But for the southern part of the province, we're looking at some sunshine, clear skies. This will definitely make most of the regions warm up to highs between -1s and -4s for the southern part of the province, while up north we're going to see much of our colder temperatures between -15 and -22, and highs would only be around -10 to -19 in most of the regions. But Winnipeg right now, we're sitting at -8 with clear skies in the forecast.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Well, you might hear in our control room there, someone's calling our traffic line, so we're going to find out if that's something we should get on air. Abby, you'll just check that. Thanks, Abby. Because Corey is in here with other news and traffic.
That's right. Our YouTube producer Brad stepping us for us. So
thanks,
Brad. So northbound St. Mary's, so that we know right now, there is just past Riel, northbound St. Mary's, there's a stall blocking the northbound median lane. Keep right to get around that. Also got a call from Kathy, southbound Henderson just before Gilmore in the median lane. She said there's a car blocking that lane, the median lane as well. So that's southbound Henderson just past Gilmore. There was an issue before on just westbound Regent coming up on La Jamodière. That has been cleared, so don't have to worry about that. Though if there's anything else that there is, I think they're typing another thing on there for you right now.
I have a feeling it's what you mentioned because it's St. Mary's Road.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
So good. So that's confirmed, still a problem. But other than that, it's been a pretty clear commute overall. But if you do see something going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, more than 80,000 Manitobans were prescribed Ozempic for type 2 diabetes. That is 5 times more claims than in 2021. So that number coming from 2024. And that number doesn't include people who take the drug purely for weight loss. Demand for this drug has increased across Canada over the past few years. And so much so, Health Canada started reviewing a cheaper generic obesity medication that could roll out as early as this summer. Hartley Macklin says he's not surprised about Ozempic growing in popularity. He's been using it since 2018 when he was pre-diabetic.
I've lost between 70 and 80 pounds. That has a huge effect on your lifestyle and what you can do and travel and just driving somewhere. You know, cars are not built for 320-pound people.
But Ozempic comes with a long list of possible risks and side effects. Jennifer Lake is with us, Associate Professor at the University of Toronto's Faculty of Pharmacy, and she's with us via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So what do you think, first of all, about the demand I mentioned for Ozempic and how it's skyrocketing, 5-fold in just 4 years?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you say that because when I was looking at the prevalence of diabetes in Manitobans is about 11%. So if you sort of put that in your population, that'd be about 150,000 people would have diabetes, either type 1, the insulin, or type 2, which is the one we're talking about treating with Ozempic. One of the differences for Manitobans is they aren't able to access Ozempic except with an exceptional drug status. And that means they have to fail another second-line drug before they can access Ozempic. And so I think what you're seeing here is about a very small percentage of people getting it about 5 years ago. And now as we've gotten more evidence for the drugs, the GLP-1s or glucolytic peptide 1s, you're seeing more people using this drug appropriately for patients with type 2 diabetes.
Why is it so popular?
So we've had a lot of studies come out in the last sort of 5 to 6 years that have shown that patients who are at risk of cardiovascular events, whether they have type 2 diabetes or not, people with type 2 diabetes who have renal problems actually get much better benefit from this drug than they do other second-line diabetes agents. So what we're seeing is the Diabetes Canada guidelines suggest metformin first, and then now, since 2022, they really are emphasizing this class of drugs as the second line.
And just remind us, what is in the drug, how it works.
Yeah, so the GLP-1s, they're a class of drugs, and what they do is they slow down your GI tract. And so it makes you feel fuller faster, and then it changes the hormones. It acts and mimics a hormone that we make normally, and that's where this weight loss starts to happen. So that slowing down of the GI tract, that's the most common side effects we see are people who feel like they have to burp or they're bloated. people who are nauseated or have constipation.
How did it transition into a weight loss medication? Like, was it just started for diabetes and people realized that it was, working for weight loss, or what's your sense of that?
Yeah, so the clinical trials were first done in diabetes. That's why we saw sort of that initial everybody with diabetes getting them. But what we saw was when we compared patients on this drug or other diabetes drugs, we were seeing extensive weight loss in the 10 to 15% of people's body weights. And that has never been seen with drugs before. Really what we had was bariatric surgery. And so it was a really big change for all these people with type 2 diabetes and other people at risk of health conditions.
And what's your key concern then if we look at that about Ozempic?
Yeah, so I think we always say when more people in clinical trials, all of the patients are the same. They're sort of 18 to 45. And then as we start to see drugs out in general populations, we use them in older people, we use them in people who have other comorbidities, so like other conditions. And so they're always a bit higher risk of having more side effects. And so we want to watch for those.
And what are some of those side effects?
Yeah, so as I said, the common ones are really related to how it works. People, nausea, vomiting. There's a couple of rare ones now that we've used it. Manitoba's not the only people. We're seeing worldwide use of this. Some of the rare ones, which we're looking at like 1 in 10,000 people getting, are irreversible vision changes. So if anybody were getting a vision loss, a sudden vision loss, sudden blurriness, they should see an emergency for that. And then the other one is an inflammation of the pancreas. And again, around that 1 in 10,000 people, not common at all, but very serious, and we would want people to go seek medical attention.
And let's just revisit how easy is it to get a prescription for it? You were talking about this a bit at the beginning, right? In Manitoba, especially.
Yeah. So in Manitoba, the current exceptional drug status is that you have to have been on metformin and you have to have failed a very old class of diabetes drugs called a sulfonylurea. And that's the drugs that patients might know are glyburide or gliclazide. And so then it's sort of, you have to try those and they have to be not effective or you have to have side effects. These older drugs, they tend to cause a lot of very low blood sugars, so people actually having symptoms of it. And so then you can go on to the Ozempic.
Is it? Maybe you can't qualify it this way, but is it good to have a process like that to make it more difficult to get onto Ozempic, do you think?
So I think probably I would say that's not where we are now. Since 2022 and 2024, our expert guidelines say that this really is the preferred second line. So we're seeing a lot of people go over. I think probably, as you noted at the top, this switch to generics, we're going to see those in the next few months, is really going to make it very popular for public health. We're spending, right? We're trying to constrain spending when we use these exceptional drug access. And so hopefully the generics will make it a little bit more easy to get.
What do you want Canadians to keep in mind if they are prescribed Ozempic?
Yeah, so if you are prescribed Ozempic, you should be watching out for those very rare but serious. So vision changes, abdominal pain that's sort of sudden, and you should see. If you're having any questions, go to your local community pharmacy. Manitoba's got some great pharmacists and some expanded scope in diabetes, so they'd be great resources and available in many communities. Your family doctor, nurse practitioner, or if you have a diabetes specialist like an endocrinologist.
And I just do want to revisit the reason for the 80,000 Manitobans, 5 times more claims than in 2021, being prescribed Ozempic, that is. You were saying that you were looking at the comparing the data for how the population, how many people in our population have diabetes. And so your sense is that this is an increase that is reflecting people using it for that.
Yeah, I actually think probably what you're seeing is, especially because you've gone sort of past this 2022 where the guidelines changed to this is the best second line agent, you're seeing an appropriate uptake of evidence-based care for your Manitobans.
All right. Thank you very much, Jennifer. Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Jennifer Lake, Associate Professor at the University of Toronto's Faculty of Pharmacy.
Are you responsible for the life of a tiny human? It's a lot, we know. Try a more zen approach with CBC Gen. It has your little one's best friends like Peppa Pig, Paw Patrol, Daniel Tiger, Dino Ranch, and more. Our shows are calm, fun, and educational. Best of all, it's totally free, and kids watch without any ads. Watch free on CBC Gen. And exhale.
Well, might be relaxing like that if you are responsible for a little one, dropping them off at elementary school. Marcus Chambers, councillor, was on just before 8 talking about his idea to have the city look at 1-minute drop-offs and pickups around elementary schools across the city of Winnipeg. He's doubled down, says he thinks that 1 minute's enough time. He gets so many calls, he said, and other councillors as well, about these zones being problematic and dangerous, and he believes that there needs to be some kind of enforcement, and maybe teachers could play a role. So that full interview you can hear on our CBC Listen app in case you missed it. But since then, you've been calling.
Good morning, Marcy. It's James Slade calling. Having been a parent and raised my kids and seen what a disaster this can be around some schools, I really question whether safety really is the issue, because if that was the case, you wouldn't have any zones near the school where people could stop and park. Unless you're handicapped, you don't need to be dropped off at the door. I would always take my kids to the end of the schoolyard or pass into a residential area, park there and walk my kids in. It's way safer. And if they have to walk for 2 minutes, even in the cold, it's going to be fine. They're dressed for it.
Hey, good morning. Dan Jansen. I think this school drop-off thing is it's a serious matter, and I don't know why parents can't park further down on a street and just walk their kids to school. This is the typical helicopter parents thing where they have to, bring their kids right to the door. In my day, we'd walk to school. I know it's the old joke about, 3 miles uphill both ways, but it's just getting ridiculous here. And it's not a time to socialize. It's a time to drop your kid off and get on with your day.
Thanks for the calls. Now, that comment about it's not a time to socialize came from Jim Agapito, one of our reporters here in our unit, went out and talked to other parents yesterday about this idea. And some parents were saying that they do see it as a time to connect with other parents at drop-off, say hello with teachers and such, a time to sort of build community. And so there's been a couple of comments reacting to that. Cynthia Georgina wrote into CBC, I'm interested in the comment that drop-off and pick-up are time to build community, and included teachers in the comment. As a teacher, I have to question if those times are the best in which to have ad hoc conversations. My own school has a, quote, drive-through type system. An EA greets the children as they're dropped off. The school car park accommodates this as it has an in-out loop, and the students are escorted to a pathway to the playground. I realize not all schools have this as an option, but is a very efficient system. Other people writing in, just looking at the overall thinking around drop-off and pickups and where we're at. Ian McCausland saying, when the conversation revolves around only cars and nothing else, you won't see much progress. We need to embrace efforts in active transportation, school having lock-up cages for bikes, no car zones around zones, and for kids to feel they can walk to school. There's plenty of ways to make things better without so many cars. Zilla Jones writing in, they are generally chaos, these zones. People sit there on their phones instead of dropping off quickly and leaving. They make traffic backups. They drop off outside the zones. Then you have kids crossing in front of or between cars. Everyone's in a rush. The zones move slowly. She says, I remember one family at my kids' old school used to park the big truck almost every day in a back lane that a lot of us turned onto to get out of the drop-off zone. They put their hazards on, they got out, they went into school with their kid. That forced everyone to have to drive around another block where there were student patrols. And one year then there was a City of Winnipeg snowplow that also came through the drop-off zone at that time, which all sounds really stressful, parents. I can see why this is a big talker. Corey's popped in, but I have more comments. Can I keep going with this?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, so here is one that comes from Deborah Denise, who's also writing to CBC on this idea of school drop-off zones, 1 minute drop-off pickup in elementary. The city's looking at what might work at different schools or not. Not all schools, by the way, of course, have a designated zone. That's part of the issue. But Deborah Denise says, I live near Marie Anne Gabory School. The traffic jam around the school is terrible. Parents illegally park on both sides of Pulbury for drop-off, and then it's impossible to get through. Putting your flashers on does not make it okay, Deborah writes. It should only be allowed for kids with mobility issues. That's been spoken a lot by many of you today. There's room to park in the surrounding side streets. Also, Deborah says, because she lives nearby, so many people pull into my driveway to turn around. You're not the only one that wrote this, Deborah, by the way. She said, if parents allowed themselves 10 extra minutes, they would have time to park and walk. I usually avoid going anywhere during the morning and afternoon drop-off. Sometimes it can't be avoided, and in the end, it's very dangerous. So this is interesting. Jacqueline Castle Kramer wrote in that we have a school directly across the street and drop-offs can be chaotic, especially because they have a daycare as well in the school. One time, though, the school arranged with a nearby business to use their parking lot as a drop-off point, but no longer seems the case. And she says also we have had parents use our driveway to do U-turns, even to park and wait for their kids in our driveway. One parent got aggressive with my husband when they were asked to leave, rather. I would support designated drop-off and time limits provided they are supervised. And that leads us to our final comment about supervision. Kev Roberts, schools don't have the staffing to deal with this. Resources can be better spent. We need more adults helping kids learn to read, not policing drop-offs. Every school and family situation is different. Some families are rushing to get everyone where they need to be. It's tricky. Let's not penalize people who are trying their best. But clearly we need a solution to this. It's a massive issue across Winnipeg. So Councillor Chambers raising his solution. Not sure if people are buying into the 1 minute. I haven't heard anyone saying it. That's great, 1 minute, perfect yet. But city's going to study this moving forward. Your call-in is a little bit related to this.
It's adjacent to it for sure. So today we're exploring whether, we are, too worried about our kids' safety. We're going to have an expert on noon today. We're going to open up the phone lines to ask the question, do we coddle our kids too much in terms of safety? There's a lot of it comes down to, back in the day, we heard people used to let their kids to walk to school. Now, there's concerns about, about is that safe? Is that not? So we're going to have that conversation. We're going to have an expert on from UBC who's an expert in risky play and the benefits that does have. And maybe we need to talk more about that. But also we can talk about that means that extends to playgrounds and other things like that, snow hills like that, the new policies in Quebec, things like that. So we're going to have that conversation. You can call in whether you are a parent, a kid, or you were once a kid. Tell us your stories. We'd love to hear from you. That's coming up at noon at 12:30.
All right. Thanks very much, Corey.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, of course, directs the show and is on air with us this morning, but has been guest hosting a Radio Noon all week, as he will be doing today. So between 12:30 and 1, that is the call-in topic. Are we coddling the kids too much? You can weigh in there and call. Mild day across the south here. I just want to mention that we did have that problem just around 8 o'clock. It might be cleared by now, but southbound Henderson just before Gilmore, stalled car with 4 ways blocking the median lane. Right now it is time for your CBC Manitoba News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30, -8 right now. Nice clear sky. We are going to be well above seasonal, much warmer than the regular -13. Today's high, -2. Federal, provincial, and Indigenous leaders are all on their way to Pimicik Cree Nation this morning. That northern community has widespread problems with frozen water and sewer lines after a 4-day power outage. Chief David Monius welcomes a request from the province to Ottawa to send in the military. He has a copy of the request Manitoba's Emergency Management Minister sent to the federal government.
Being able to see the letter, I think that's good for us. The sooner we can get help from these guys, from the Army, that would be great.
Monius says only a small percentage of the more than 1,300 homes in Pimicikamak have been attended to by maintenance staff. He says 2 schools, the arena, the youth center, all are damaged. And the community sewage plant frozen. Monius hopes Army engineers can take on some of those repairs. Gone in 60 seconds may have been a good premise for an action movie, but some Winnipeg parents say it's a terrible idea for elementary schools. Councillor Marcus Chambers wants to impose a time limit of 1 minute for drivers to pick up or drop off children in designated zones outside elementary schools. Chambers says it's needed to reduce congestion and unsafe behavior that can put kids at risk. Mom Susan Moskovitz says there's no need to rush kids and parents through the daily ritual.
In elementary school, it's all about community, getting to know people. So basically, you're taking that away from families if you make them leave. And also, how are you even going to enforce that? So are you going to have security guards here moving people off the premises? I just don't think it's realistic.
Chambers' proposal also calls for clearer signage and stepped-up enforcement during peak school hours. The Riel Committee is set to debate that motion today. A Winnipeg business owner says a study doesn't change her view on a supervised consumption site in Winnipeg. Marla Murphy at Ultimate Wheel Works on Logan Avenue worries about how the proposed Henry Avenue site will impact that area. She says the business already deals with lots of crime committed by people who are using drugs.
No reasoning with them when they're in psychosis, and to support something to enable them to partake of their illegal substances, which used to be illegal and as far as I know still is, to encourage that behavior and enable it just blows my mind.
A study recently published by McGill University found supervised consumption sites are not linked to long-term increases in crime. Researchers examined 9 Toronto supervised drug consumption sites that opened starting in 2017 and closed last year. While there was an initial jump in break-and-enters near some sites, over time, those reports declined. Former Manitoba PC leadership candidate Wally Dowdrich has asked a court to restore his company's ability to take tourists to see polar bears near Churchill. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
Dowdrich and his company Lazy Bear Expeditions has filed a claim with Manitoba's Court of King's Bench alleging 2 Manitoba wildlife officials and 3 NDP cabinet ministers interfered with Lazy Bear's business. Dowdrich asked the court to restore 2 off-road vehicle permits for the Churchill Wildlife Management Area. Lazy Bear received the permits in 2020, but they were not renewed last year. Dowdrich claims the province conspired with Lazy Bear's competitors. He also claims he's the victim of discrimination due to his political beliefs. Dowdrich is also seeking financial damages. His allegations haven't been tested in court. No statement of defense has been filed. NDP cabinet spokesperson Ben Leahy said the government can't comment while another Dowdrich legal action is before the courts. A decision is pending on an earlier request by Dowdrich for a judicial review of the decision not to issue permits. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Claims for the diabetes and weight loss drug Ozempic have been ballooning in Manitoba. Provincial data shows the number of times that medication has been dispensed across this province has more than quadrupled over the past 4 years. That could increase with generic versions of the drug expected to come on the market this year. Britt Curl from Pharmacists Manitoba says those thinking of using drugs like Ozempic should consider whether they're right for them.
The important thing to remember with Ozempic is that it's not meant to be used just to lose weight for people who don't have, significant weight to lose.
Ozempic is covered under Manitoba's Pharmacare program for people with type 2 diabetes. Others have to pay out of pocket or rely on private insurance to cover the cost. Novo Nordisk's patent for semaglutide products, including Ozempic and Wegovy, expired January 4th. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
So thanks to our news department overall. This morning, that includes Heather Wells and Megan Ketchison and Joni Nicolo, as well as an early morning touch base from the airport with Ian Fraze from our news department, who has headed up to Pimachikamak. Also, thanks to our team, reporter Jim Agapito in our current affairs unit, community reporter Shanley Vidal as well. Our associate producers who had items on today's show, Zabina Ahmed, Jenna Badasso, and Sophia Peralta Barone, as well as our Studio 15 crew, Corey Funk, Abby Adiyemi, and Brad Lillies, and the producers in charge, Nellie Gonzalez of the shows overall, and Leif Larson, the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba. Thanks, everyone. And of course, overall, the biggest thank you is to you for listening, for weighing in, for calling, for writing to CBC, and appreciate you being along for this Wednesday morning. All right, a last look at the weather, Abby.
Yeah, Marcy, it's going to be more like sunny conditions in the southern part of the province while we're seeing light snow falling around Thompson and towards Churchill this morning. For the south, we're seeing morning temperatures between -4 and -18s, and we'll see highs around -1 in some areas down south today, while up north, we're going to see temperatures hover between -15 and -22 with some cloudy conditions up north, and then the further north you travel, you will be seeing light snowfall around Churchill. But Winnipeg, we're closing the day at -8 and we warm up to -2 later.
All right, we have 15 seconds left. Corey, you just got off the phone.
Yeah, issue with the train on Fairmont and Wilkes, blocking traffic around there into Charleswood. Lots of RCMP vehicles on scene, so we'll look into more
All
to
right,
that.
just sliding in the last tip here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. The Current is next.